Chapter 199. Why are you following me? Zhu Yao turned around and glared at that stupid fox who was carrying a tree branch and swaggering behind her. He even thought that he had concealed himself well. Bai weakly glanced at her. I want to go to the market as well. This is my first time out. Can I go with great deity? Why are you going to the market? Zhu Yao glanced at him and suddenly thought of something. You can't really be going to buy clothes, right? That's right. He nodded his head. That's right, my ass. Zhu Yao glanced at him in disdain. You don't even bathe. Why do you need so many clothes? Bai was startled, and then his fur immediately exploded. He angrily replied, I have fur licking. That's even more disgusting, you know? Clearly, he had already transformed. So why was he still maintaining the cleaning method of an animal? Zhu Yao could not be bothered with him. If he wanted to follow, then let him. However, it was a pity that she did not even have a flying mystic artifact right now. Otherwise, she wouldn't even need to walk. She walked for an entire day and night, and finally arrived at a small market when the sky was just starting to brighten. However, it was not a market for practitioners, but for mortals. The people inside were all mortals without spiritual energy. Zhu Yao was a little disappointed. Initially, she had thought that she would at least solve the problem of transportation. Now, it seemed like that plan was foiled. She could only search for suitable materials and refine one herself. Just as she turned into the street, a white figure suddenly charged out from the side. She instinctively turned to the side, and that person fell onto the ground, and his face even landed on the ground. Fortunately, she dodged in time. Otherwise, the one who fell would be her. How can you do this? A face that was about to cry suddenly rose from the ground. Her sparkling eyes were sparkling with tears, and she was lightly biting her red lower lip. Her brows seemed to be filled with endless grievances, causing one to be unable to help but feel sorry for her. Zhu Yao simply felt a bang in her mind, as though thousands of sparks had been ignited. She unconsciously held her breath and stared at that face with widened eyes. She did not even dare to blink. It really was like searching for her in the crowd, startling a flock of gulls and herons. Apui. In any case, it was. There's actually such an otherworldly beauty in this world, the fox suddenly said. Zhu Yao almost sprayed a mouthful of salted soda onto his face. However, she could not help but agree. Yes, it was otherworldly. Even the 3 letters, bug, on her face were freaking otherworldly. Okay? That's right. One word was clearly written on the faces of the girls on the ground. Bug. Realm Spirit said that the difficulty of these quests would increase, so when the new avatar came online, she had been worried about what the bug this time was. Would it be like last time, where she only found out what it was at the end? He didn't expect that she would come to him so soon. Junior sister Yi Ling. A man in blue ran over with a worried expression and helped the lady up. Yi Ling. This name sounded so familiar. How do you walk? Why did you push her down? Zhu Yao was speechless. Was this person blind? Senior Martial Brother Qi. Forget it. The woman tugged at the man, looking as if she didn't want to pursue the matter. Oh, blindness is contagious. The man sighed and said gently, Ling you're just too kind. Senior Martial Brother. The woman pushed the man and pouted her lips. I don't think this big sister did it on purpose either. Forget it. Zhu Yao. Look. It's a living green tea. The man shook his head with a helpless look. He then turned to glare at her. Hurry and apologize to my junior martial sister. Zhu Yao pointed to herself. Me? What? You pushed someone down, yet you're not even going to apologize? Senior Martial Brother, forget it. The woman shrunk back and continued to tug at the corner of the man's robe. She was clearly trying to persuade him, yet it lit another fire in the man's fury. Don't be afraid. I will seek justice for you. After saying that, his blade-like eyes swept towards Zhu Yao. I'm sorry. Zhu Yao immediately replied. Her straightforwardness caused the two of them to be startled for a moment. It was as if they were about to explode out from their chests, yet they couldn't find an exit. Yet, they couldn't find any other reason to get angry. In the end, they could only let out a cold snort and leave. Zhu Yao frowned, though she did not feel that sullen. She had just seen a bug, and she did not know the plot yet, so it wasn't a good time to start a conflict. It wasn't like she would lose a piece of flesh if she apologized. Though, the fox looked at the direction the two of them left with an infatuated look. His expression was a little blank. This guy couldn't have fallen in love with that green tea at first sight, right? Was a fox's IQ that low? Great deity, I'm going to buy new clothes. As he looked at the direction the woman left, he explained. Evidently, he had an ulterior motive. Oh, you're not following me anymore? His expression stiffened for a moment before he explained with a stutter. I'm already at the market. As expected, he had no humanity when it came to the opposite sex. But that woman earlier, forget it. What did that have to do with her? The most important thing right now was, she touched her pocket. Just when they were conversing earlier, she felt the two fruits in her pocket move a little, and they were even faintly emitting heat. Zhu Yao was worried about her master and Yuing, so she did not have the mood to talk much with the fox. With a wave of her hand, she parted ways with him. Finding a remote place, she materialized a straw cottage, and then she placed down a number of contiguous formations before taking out the two fruits, one black and one white. Master, Zhu Yao pushed the white fruit. Yuing? She then pushed the black fruit. Both of them did not react, but the two fruits were getting hotter and hotter, to the point where Zhu Yao could barely hold on to them. She had no choice but to materialize a large bowl and place the fruits inside. The surrounding spiritual energy suddenly became denser, and more spiritual energy gathered in this direction. Among them, the majority was with spiritual energy. Zhu Yao was a little puzzled, but a moment later, the spiritual energy flew towards the two fruits and were absorbed into them endlessly. The two fruits were emitting out two types of light, one red and one white. Why did this scene look a little familiar, as though she had seen it not too long ago? The hell, wasn't this the same situation as when she was transforming? Her master and Yu Ying were transforming. Zhu Yao felt a little strange. Back then, she had transformed in the forest, so the wood's spiritual energy in the forest was naturally abundant. However, this place was close to the market, and the wood's spiritual energy was sparse. After pondering for a moment, she placed down several spiritual energy guiding formations to prevent the two of them from malnutrition. The spiritual energy was getting denser, probably because the two of them were transforming at the same time. The flowing spiritual energy was causing the straw cottage to begin to tremble. Zhu Yao had no choice but to stand guard at the side. The two balls of light grew brighter, and the entire house was filled with alternating red and white light, so blinding that one could not open their eyes. Then, two figures slowly appeared on the table. At first, it was just a small ball, and then it slowly grew. 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters, half a meter. Suddenly, the light retracted, and the house instantly returned to normal. On the table, two pink and jade-like little wimps appeared. Why were they children? This was illogical. Master? The white-clothed child on the left frowned and responded, Amen. Yu Ying. The black-clothed child on the right smiled sweetly. Big Sis Yao. All right, it really was the two of them. Why did they turn into children? And they even looked so cute. Chubby and chubby, just like children in paintings. People could not help but want to hug them. If their buttocks weren't stuffed into the same bowl. The large bowl that Zhu Yao materialized to hold them earlier, after they turned into human forms, was evidently unable to contain the two of them, and was about to be filled with two little buttocks. And the two of them seemed to be stuck. Yu Yan's face was cold as he emitted cold air without moving an inch. Yu Ying was currently grabbing onto the edge of the bowl with both hands, desperately trying to pull himself out of the bowl. However, no matter how he tried, he was still unable to escape from the bowl. She suddenly recalled a certain advertisement for a certain chocolate. Can't you bring a bigger bowl? Amen. The next time she knew that they were going to transform together, she would definitely bring a bigger bowl. Under the situation where Yu Ying's attempts were futile, in the end, Yu Yin still had to cast an art and tap on the edge of the bowl. In an instant, the bowl cracked open, and the two of them finally separated, obtaining their freedom. They exchanged glances, and then took a step back in disdain. Big Sis Yao. Ying reached out a chubby little paw towards her with a wronged look, causing Zhu Yao's face to turn red from his cuteness. She could not help but stroke his head. How did you two become like this? This was too illogical. We've just transformed, so we don't have enough spiritual energy. Yu Yen replied, we can only transform into this form. Zhu Yao was startled. After carefully inspecting the two of them, she suddenly widened her eyes. Your cultivations. They were actually only at the middle stages of essence, which was even lower than hers. Big sis Yao, don't worry. Ying raised his head and rubbed against her palm. My cultivation is still here, it's just that I don't have enough spiritual energy, and my current body isn't able to withstand it either. As long as I have enough time, I will naturally recover. There's no need to recultivate. Really? Zhu Yao looked at Yu Yen. Yu Yen nodded in agreement, yet his voice carried a hint of fatigue, and his eyes unconsciously drooped. Only then did Zhu Yao heave a sigh of relief. She sensed his abnormality. Master, what's wrong? It's fine. Yu Yen shook his head. I've just used a mystic art, so I'm just a little tired. It was indeed very difficult for him to use mystic arts with his current body. Just a small mystic art was enough to make him feel extremely tired, and his head uncontrollably drooped downwards. Even though he was clearly just a small lump, he looked as though he was stubbornly refusing to fall asleep. In an instant, Zhu Yao was in a complete mess, and she could not help but reach out her hand towards him. Hurry and come into my bowl. Apui, hurry and come into my embrace. What? You need to rest. Come, little friend. Let Auntie hug you. Before Yu Yen could even reply, Ying at the side was the one who had an opinion. His similarly bun face frowned, and he reached out his little hands. Big sis Yao. His face looked as though he was begging for a hug and comfort. Zhu Yao felt as though her heart was once again pierced by an arrow. This feeling of acting cute in the entire world. It was simply irresistible. Just as she was about to change her target, suddenly, another white dumpling charged into her embrace at lightning speed and hugged onto her neck. A hint of redness rose on the white dumpling's face, but he quickly regained his composure. Using his grandmother's voice, he said with a stern expression, Yao, your master needs to rest. Protect me. After saying that, he turned around and coldly glanced at Ying, and then he dove into her embrace without another word. Zhu Yao, such childish behavior. Master, are you trying to fight for favor? But I like it. Blue Parasol Sect's disciple Guancheng has come to visit. I wonder if fellow Taoist is willing to meet me? An unfamiliar male voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. Zhu Yao frowned. She had long guessed that her master and Yu Ying's abnormal spiritual energy movement earlier would definitely attract the attention of nearby practitioners. Hence, she used a formation to conceal their presence and made it look as though someone was building his foundation here. Logically speaking, it was very common for practitioners to build their foundation. Even if they noticed it, most people would ignore it. She did not expect that someone would still come knocking. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, before carrying her master who was pretending to be asleep with one hand, and Yu Ying with the other, she walked out. When she saw that the man outside had the cultivation level of an essence paragon, she felt a little more at ease. However, when her eyes landed on the three people at the side, she narrowed her eyes. Truly, it's a small world. It's you. The green-robed man's expression stiffened as he looked at her with a constipated expression. The face of the woman behind him paled as well. That's right. These two people were the bug-like duo she met on the streets earlier. The other one was actually that fox with a fetish for things. Hi, we meet again. Zhu Yao winked at the three of them. Junior Marshal Brother Qi Ping, you're acquainted with this fellow Taoist? Guancheng looked at the two of them. Qi Ping looked at her a little angrily. We've met once. Guancheng did not pursue the matter. Instead, he took a step forward and gave Zhu Yao a greeting of the same generation. Congratulations on successfully building your foundation. He naturally thought that the abnormal spiritual energy movement earlier was because she was building her foundation. I wonder which sect or sect fellow Taoist is from? No sect or sect. Zhu Yao honestly replied. A hint of obvious joy flashed past Guancheng's eyes as he grew even more passionate. Then, fellow Taoist, are you interested in joining my Blue Parasol sect? To tell you the truth, the reason this humble one descended the mountain this time is to recruit disciples for my sect. He tried his best to persuade her, as though he was afraid that she wouldn't agree. I can see that fellow Taoist's aptitude is extraordinary, and you're able to build your foundation with your own abilities. In the future, you will definitely have great achievements. My Blue Parasol sect can be considered as one of the top sects in the cultivation world. The sect has plenty of resources, and I believe it will be beneficial to fellow Taoist cultivation. Sure, but my sect has 3. Only then did Guan Cheng realize what she said, and he could not believe his own ears. Fellow Taoist, you're agreeing to it? That's right. What happened to wandering practitioners having high self-esteem and being unrestrained? When do we depart? She was just fretting over the fact that she did not have the chance to get close to the bug-like. Guan Cheng's eyes instantly shone. Tomorrow, we will be selecting disciples at the market. Fellow Taoist, you can gather with us at the market at noon. All right, Zhu Yao nodded. After pondering for a moment, she then pointed to the 2 family members in her hands. Can I bring them along? Of course. Guan Cheng nodded even faster. With his cultivation level as a paragon, he was naturally able to tell that the children in her hands were practitioners as well. I wonder if these 2 are your disciples? Son. Zhu Yao's face did not even blush as she took advantage of him. Guan Cheng was stunned. This young girl did not look that old, yet she already had such a big son, and there were 2 of them. Ying was startled for a moment, and then cooperated with her as he raised his head and shouted, Mother! Good boy! As expected, he took the bait. The white dumpling in her embrace, however, stiffened, and his little face instantly darkened. Guan Cheng said a few courteous words before bringing the crowd away. Before the bug-like student left, he even gave her a bow, only to receive a glare from the disciple called Qi Ping next to him. Though, that stinky fox, she did not know what had happened between them, as he had been looking at the bug-like student with tender feelings the entire time, and did not even cast a single glance in her direction. Chapter 200. Zhu Yao felt that this world was very strange. Although this place was also the lower realm, evidently, it was not the cultivation world that she first transmigrated to. She had asked around, and there was basically no ancient hill sect in this world. Furthermore, spiritual monsters that turned into demons were very common in this world. All living creatures could cultivate into demons, and demons and humans could cultivate into deities. However, she did not see any demonic beasts. The forest that she woke up in was filled with spiritual energy. Logically speaking, it should be a very suitable place for demonic beasts to reside in. However, she did not even encounter a single demonic beast. Before Zhu Yao could even figure out this problem, suddenly, a ding sound rang in front of her, and a conversation window popped up. Your scenario has been delivered. Please take note to receive. Receive or courting death. Zhu Yao. Since when did the mode of delivering scenarios change? And what the hell was with that courting death option at the back? Zhu Yao sighed and tapped on the receive button. The screen flashed, and a row of white words appeared. 100 megabit fiber optic, storyline worry-free, good reviews. Oh dear. Scenario transmission. She thought that after choosing this option, she would immediately fall into a deep sleep and receive the bug scenario in her dreams like how she did in the past. However, this time, she was clear-headed as she sat on the chair. Suddenly, a large amount of information appeared in her mind, and they were all written in words, without any images. This feeling was a little similar to reading an entire novel in an instant. From the scenario, she understood this was indeed the lower realm. However, it was different from the cultivation world that she was familiar with. The practitioners in this world were divided into 3 types: human practitioners, demonic practitioners, and beast practitioners. The relationship between the 3 was very subtle. Human practitioners and demonic practitioners lived together, and many demonic practitioners would join cultivation sects after they took form. They could be considered as loving each other. However, the relationship between them and beast practitioners was especially tense, to the point where they would not rest until one of them died. And the so-called beast practitioners referred to demonic beasts of various ranks. And the main character this time was that girl called Yiling whom she met. If she had to use a single word to describe this bug, she could only say, Mary Sue. Too motherfucking Mary Sue. This Yiling was simply the female version of the first bug, Xiao Yi, and she was even the upgraded version. Yiling was also an orphan, but she didn't suffer at all. Due to her good aptitude, she was taken in as a disciple by her master, Reverend Xian Su, from a young age and was raised like a treasure. In addition, she had been obedient and sensible since a young age and had a sweet tongue, so her senior and junior brothers in the sect doted on her even more, unwilling to let her suffer even the slightest bit. But as she grew older, this kind of unreserved love slowly changed. First, it was her master, whom she had been with day and night, who had developed feelings for her. Then, it was her senior brother who had fallen deeply in love with her. Even the sect leaders of other sects who occasionally came to visit fell in love with her at first sight. The Mary Sue setting was unimaginably powerful. 3/4 of the plot was about all kinds of men who loved and were infatuated with her. Basically, as long as it was a man, he would be attracted to her and fall deeply in love with her. Whether it was a cultivator with a bright future, the sect master of the number 1 sect, a demon king, or a rogue cultivator, no matter how outstanding a man was, as long as they knew her, they would all fall to her feet without exception. He didn't hesitate to find all kinds of cultivation resources for her and beg for the beauty's pity. It was a proper Mary Sue drama. And just like the many Mary Sue protagonists, Yiling did not accept nor reject them. While enjoying the attention of the crowd, she did not express her stance. She even said righteously that everyone was important in her heart and that she could not make a decision and did not want to hurt anyone. So, she decided to use N/P. That's right, she was NPC, photoshopped. As for those men who were all dragons and phoenixes among men, it was as if their worldview and intelligence had suddenly been shielded. They were actually humiliated to the extreme. Accept, receive. Got it. After some discussion, it was decided that Mary Sue Yiling would be the center, insisting on improving their cultivation and loving each other as the basic points. Determined to build a Mary Sue crab society for the rest of his life. If things were to end just like that, other than sighing at the weird thoughts of the male and female leads, Zhu Yao really did not have any interest in interfering. In any case, one of them was willing to fight, while the other was willing to be crippled. It had nothing to do with the others. If she hadn't provoked the Beast Lord later on. The Beast Lord, the king of all beasts. That's right, the beasties of this world were actually organized, disciplined, and had rulers. Due to an accident, Yiling saved the trapped demonic Beast King. Under her careful care, this Beast Lord fell in love with her. After a period of mutual loyalty, Yiling successfully subdued this N+1 male lead. He became a member of her gigantic harem. Initially, it wasn't much, but the main point was that this Beast Lord was the only one whose brain was normal out of all the male leads. When he found out that his own woman, other than him, had a large group of other men, he was enraged and went berserk. His original sweet pampering route turned downwards, and he turned into sadistic love. Of course, the sadistic love was for the female lead, and the sadistic love was for the other men in her harem. The Beast Lord captured her back, and then, he began to crazily take revenge on the other men. The female lead's men either died or were injured. Yiling naturally refused to do so, and so, she quarreled with the Beast Lord, criticizing him for being heartless and heartless. The Beast Lord was enraged by her attitude, and was even more certain that she couldn't bear to part with the other men. Thus, when he took revenge on those men, he became even more merciless. Only then did Yiling begin to feel fear, and her feelings for the Beast Lord faded as well. In order to escape, she pretended to be righteous and fawned on the Beast Lord, to ease the relationship between the two of them. Then, while he was unprepared, she gathered the remaining men and escaped. When the Beast Lord realized this, he was completely enraged. He was a demonic beast in the first place, and demonic beasts only had a single partner in their entire lives. Furthermore, they had an extremely strong possessiveness towards their partners. Yiling's actions were an extreme betrayal to him. The amount of love he had for her back then was now the amount of hatred he had for her. Hence, a heart demon formed in him, and he could no longer walk out of it. And because of this, he took out his anger on all the human practitioners. He completely hated everyone. He gathered the demonic beasts and triggered an unprecedented huge beast stampede. They invaded the human practitioners' territory, unleashed a massacre, and completely flattened the entire cultivation world. And because the Beast Lord fell into his heart demon, he went insane. In the end, he couldn't even recognize Yiling, and turned into a killing machine that only knew how to kill. After killing the last human practitioner, he began to slaughter the demonic beasts. In the end, he self-destructed and ended his own life. And back then, in this world, no matter if it was human, demonic, or beast, not a single one of them was left alive. The entire story could be summed up as the severe consequences of a Mary Sue toying with one's emotions. After understanding the cause and effect, Zhu Yao felt that this bug was not as difficult as she had imagined. The crux of the story was to stop the Beast Lord from falling in love with Yiling, right? It was completely not as difficult as what Realm Spirit had described. Zhu Yao was a little glad that she had promised Guancheng to join Blue Parasol Sect. In a situation where she couldn't recognize anyone's face, she could only grasp the development of the story at a close distance. Although she did not approve of Yiling's actions as a Mary Sue, she was really not interested in caring about the other peach blossoms she had attracted. If she had to break it, she would only break her marriage, the one that courted death. In the end, Zhu Yao still told this matter to her master, and told him of her own plans. Yu Yin did not object, and simply added a single request, which was to raise her own cultivation as soon as possible. His reason was very simple. If she was unable to break the marriage, then she would use violence to suppress and eliminate that Beast Lord. It was simply simple and violent. Yu Ying did not express his opinion. He simply pulled onto her sleeves and softly said, "I'll listen to Big Sis Yao." Ever since he had reincarnated, he had become unimaginably obedient, as though he had returned to the time when she had just picked him up. He was already satisfied as long as he followed her. He did not even ask her how she knew about all these beforehand, and how she was able to reincarnate so many times. His obedient and naive look made him look like a real child. Compared to a certain master who always had a cold face like a little old man, he was much more professional. It seemed like being a mother wasn't that easy after all. On the second day, noon had just passed, and Zhu Yao's left and right hands moved in slow motion. Apui, it was a chubby doll in each hand, arriving at the market. The place where Blue Parasol Sect recruited disciples was very easy to find, and there was only one place in the entire market where spiritual energy was circulating. When they arrived, Guancheng was already standing on a tall stage, waiting for them. There were many people surrounding the place, and most of them were mortals who came to watch the show. They looked at the people on the tall stage with worshipful expressions. "Fellow Taoist, you're finally here." Guancheng saw her with a single glance and bowed in her direction. Zhu Yao immediately used the Imperial Wind Art, brought the two children, and flew up the tall stage. There were 8 people on the stage. Other than the Bug Duo and the Fox by Chuyi, there were 2 other disciples who were dressed the same as Guancheng. Behind the 2 of them were 2 children who were about 10 years old. Their faces were filled with excitement, and it seemed like they were the disciples they had recruited this time. "I'm ashamed to say this." Guancheng stepped forward to speak. "Yesterday, I was in too much of a hurry, so I did not have the time to ask fellow Taoist how I should address you. I'm Zhu Yao." Zhu Yao pulled the 2 children next to her. "He's Yu Yin, and this is Yu Ying. So it's fellow Taoist Jew. We shall return to the sect now." Guancheng courteously smiled and did not say anything else. With a wave of his hand, he tossed out a jade gourd, cast an art, and turned it 100 times bigger before guiding the 3 of them up. After walking for such a long time, they finally saw a transportation tool. It wasn't easy at all. Yiling and her follower, Qi Ping, followed closely behind. Though Yiling courteously smiled at her, Qi Ping, however, still had a displeased look on his face. Brainless children were much happier, so Zhu Yao could not be bothered with the two of them either. Though, the fox demon by Yi at the side was still looking at Yiling in a daze. She had to admit that the Mary Sue cheat was really strong. They flew for a total of 6 hours before they finally reached their destination. Unexpectedly, Blue Parasol Sect was different from the divine mountain paradise that floated in the sky in her impression. Other than the fact that it was shrouded in mist and had slightly more spiritual energy, it was just an ordinary mountain on the ground. This was the first time she had seen such a down-to-earth deity sect. Guancheng used the tablet to open the mountain barrier Great Formation and then brought them towards the Great Hall on the mountain peak. When they entered, there were already more than 10 people standing in the Great Hall. 3 people sat right in front of them, 2 men and 1 woman, and they all looked very youthful. Below the 3 of them, there seemed to be more than 10 people seated on both sides as well.
Master.
The moment they stood still, Yiling, who was at the side, pounced towards the man at the very center like a gust of wind. The man's stern face earlier was instantly filled with a doting expression as he tapped on her nose. Crazy lass, you finally know to come back? Yiling delicately stomped her legs, pouting her lips as she dragged out her voice. Master, this time, I came down the mountain to settle some official matters. Yes. The man's smile deepened. My little Ling knows how to share the sex burdens as well. Master, I missed you. Did you miss me? After saying that, she even snuggled into the man's embrace with a pampered look, as though there was no one else present. Zhu Yao could not help but shiver. The goosebumps on her body instantly fell all over the ground. It seemed like this man was sovereign Xian Su, showing off his affection so unbridled. Was he really a man of character? There was still a living person in this hall. Hey. She silently turned to look to the right. A certain mini version of her master was currently staring at the 2 people in the hall with a stern look. A moment later, he suddenly nodded. He turned to look at his own disciple and gave her an expression that said, I understand. Zhu Yao trembled. Master, what do you understand, hey? Don't learn from Mary Sue, hey? Master, this time, Ling has found 6 disciples with spirit veins, you know? Yiling pointed in Zhu Yao's direction and said in an attempt to claim credit, Ling sure is amazing. Xian Su praised, however, he did not even look at the people in the hall and simply stared at Yiling. Zhu Yao frowned. 6. Did he count her in? She was clearly invited by Guancheng, so wasn't he snatching the credit a little too obvious? Oh right, one of the big sisters is a wandering practitioner who has already built her foundation. Yiling suddenly pointed at her. Xian Su finally shifted his line of sight and looked towards Zhu Yao in the hall. A hint of satisfaction flashed past his eyes. Yiling suddenly said, although Big Sis Zhu doesn't really like me, Ling is still very happy to be able to find a talent for the sect. Xian Su's eyes instantly turned cold. The hell? This guy was trying to smear her eyes, right? She didn't offend her, right? Let's begin the spirit veins test. Xian Su's voice turned a lot colder. With a wave of his hand, a floating crystal ball instantly appeared in the hall, and he looked at Zhu Yao with a hint of warning. Let's start with you. It seemed like she was definitely going to suffer this loss. Zhu Yao took a deep breath and endured it. Raising her hand, she pressed it onto the crystal ball. The entire crystal ball turned green in color. Single wood spirit vein. Her character this time was a tree demon, so her wood spirit vein was considered normal. She believed her master and Yu Ying were the same as well. She actually has a single spirit vein. Follower Qi Ping coldly snorted. His face was filled with disdain and schadenfreude. Even Guancheng had a disappointed look as well. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. Although the wood spirit vein could not be compared to her lightning spirit vein in the past, it was still a heavenly spirit vein. This was still considered bad? Wasn't this sect's requirement a little too high? Could it be that the others all had variant spirit veins?
Next.
Xian Su did not even spare her another glance, as though she was no longer worth mentioning. The dozen or so people who stayed in the hall earlier began to take their tests one after another. In the end, most of them had tri-spirit veins, duo spirit veins, and one even had quadruple spirit veins. No matter how they tested, her spirit vein was still the best. Not even a moment later, everyone in the hall was done with their tests. Only Yu Yin and Yu Ying were left. The mini version of Yu Yin took a step forward as well. Tiptoeing, he pressed his hand onto the crystal ball, and as expected, the same green light appeared on the crystal ball. Qi Ping once again let out a cold snort. Zhu Yao frowned, as she faintly felt that she had grasped onto something. At this moment, Yu Ying pulled her hand forward as well, and pressed his little hand onto the crystal ball. However, this time, it was different from what she had expected. The crystal ball was no longer a single green color. Instead, 5 different colors of red, yellow, green, gold, and blue appeared. Why was Yu Ying still a Pinna spirit vein holder? Omni-element spirit vein. Xian Su suddenly stood up, and even the people who were seated on the chairs stared at Yu Ying with excited expressions. He actually has Penta spirit veins. It has been many years since such an aptitude has appeared. He will definitely succeed. He will definitely succeed. As expected, the heavens are protecting our blue parasol sect. Zhu Yao. Chapter 201. Zhu Yao did not know what was going on with this world. Since when did a single spirit vein become a trash spirit vein, while quintuple spirit veins were the aptitudes of the highest quality? The result of this time's spirit vein test was that she and her own master were given the cold shoulder, and according to logic, they should have been sent to the outer clan. However, Yu Ying, was fought over by the 3 sovereigns in the hall. No, they fought over him, wanting to take him in as their disciple, including Yiling's master, Xian Su. In the end, seeing that Yu Ying was still young, they would wait until he was 10 years old before deciding who he would take as his master. And thanks to him, Zhu Yao was temporarily arranged to stay in a cave residence in the inner sect. Regarding this, Zhu Yao expressed, "Your dog eyes must be blind." The place they lived in was extremely secluded, but the spiritual energy there was extremely dense. It could be seen that the Blue Parasol sect had indeed placed great importance on Yu Ying. Zhu Yao rejoiced a little as she recalled the scenario. In the future, they would have to camp here for a very long period of time. The dense spiritual qi would help them recover their cultivation as soon as possible. Before she had absolute power, she still had to try her best to avoid Yiling, that Mary Sue. Looking around, she felt that it was necessary to set up some defensive formations. "Master, what formation do you think we should set up here?" She habitually turned around to ask her master for help, but was startled by the little white ball next to her. His face was pale and his hand was pressing on his abdomen. His face was covered in cold sweat. "Master, what's wrong?" Zhu Yao hurriedly squatted down and hugged onto his swaying body. Her heart instantly tightened. Did he have any side effects from his rebirth? Yu Yin frowned. His expression was a little dazed. His breathing was unstable as he shook his head. "Your master doesn't know either. It's just that my abdomen hurts faintly." "Stomach?" Zhu Yao was startled, and then she suddenly heard a rumbling sound. Reflexively, he stared at a certain someone's belly. Could this voice be rumble, rumble, rumble? There were a few familiar cries. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. "Master, you can't be hungry, right?" This was obviously a scream of hunger, wasn't it? Hungry? Yu Yin, who had abstained from food for several tens of thousands of years, expressed. "Zhu Yao, Mom." Yu Yin immediately raised his paw to make his presence known. "I'm hungry too." Sure enough, his stomach made the same rumbling sound. "I'll go find something to eat." Zhu Yao sighed. Only then did she recall that it had been 3 days since she left the forest, and it seemed like she really had not eaten anything. She herself had already built her foundation, so there was no need for her to eat, but her master and Yu Ying were only at the aura stage, so going hungry for 3 days was probably already their limit. "Oh right, master." Zhu Yao, who had just walked into the kitchen, turned her head back. "I forgot to ask. Have you guys stopped breastfeeding?" Yu Yin, Yuin. Recently, Yu Yin was very depressed. It was one thing for him to turn into a fruit, but when he took on a human form, he could only turn into a child. Yu Yin, who had been an adult for several tens of thousands of years, expressed that he was not used to this body. Although his realm was still there, the spiritual energy in his body was pitifully little, only at the middle stage of qi condensation. It had been a long time since he had experienced the feeling of using up all the spiritual energy in his body with just a random spell. Unfortunately, he still couldn't recover his spiritual aura. His body was too young, only about 5 or 6 years old, so it couldn't withstand too much spiritual aura. Even if he wanted to build his foundation, he would have to wait until he was 10 years old. What worried him even more was that there was a devil following him. He did not have much contact with devils, so he couldn't figure out the reason why the devil insisted on following his own disciple. His disciple was so stupid. What if she was deceived by the devil? Fortunately, up until now, Ewing had yet to do anything that was disadvantageous to his disciple. His disciple was also soft-hearted, so he could still temporarily, "Mother, I'm tired. I want a hug." Ewing reached out his 2 little hands towards Zhu Yao. "All right, Mother, my feet hurt. I want a massage." "All right, Mother, I want a kiss." That string in Yu Yan's mind snapped with a pa sound. His doll-like little face instantly emitted a cold aura. Ewing curled his lips, however. He did not continue to insist. Tugging onto Zhu Yao's sleeves, he pitifully said, "Mother, I'm hungry." Zhu Yao could tell that he was doing it on purpose as well. Pinching his little face, she pointed at Yu Yan. "Look for your father." Yu Yan, Ewing. Her master was someone whose life skills were all lit up. Even though he had turned into a child, his culinary skills were still at a professional level. Ever since Zhu Yao cooked for them for the first time, she had passed the glorious and arduous task of cooking to her own master. Amen. She was in charge of placing a small stool or something on top of the stove when he was cooking. However, she did not know if it was because of malnutrition. Although they had never missed out on their 3 meals a day, they would often feel hungry. Only when she occasionally heard the little saplings in the courtyard chatting did she realize a problem. She was a tree demon, while her master and Yu Ying could barely be considered as 2 fruit demons. As plant-type demons, although human food had a certain effect on them, it was not their main way of eating. What they needed was to bask in the sun. That's right. Although they had already turned into demons, they still needed to undergo photosynthesis. Hence, the first thing Zhu Yao did every morning was to carry her master and Yu Ying to the place with the most sunlight in the courtyard to bask in the sun. And it was a 360-degree sunbath without any blind spots. This method was very effective. At the very least, she no longer heard her master's stomach beating like a drum. However, a new problem arose. After basking in the sun for a month, the 2 chubby dolls suddenly slimmed down. Even Yu Ying's double chin had disappeared. Zhu Yao felt that there was definitely a problem with her method of raising children, as she carefully recalled the various methods of raising plants. She finally obtained the answer. "Master, why don't I dig a hole and bury you too?" Yu Yin, Yu Ying. Although this method looked very ridiculous, it was theoretically possible. After all, ever since they began to take human forms, they had been cultivating without soil. Hence, Zhu Yao began to dig a hole. Yu Yin and Yu Ying watched from the side with darkened expressions, until they jumped into the hole that was twice the size of their bodies. Both of them were startled. Waves of warmth flowed into their bodies, as though the fatigue they had accumulated for the past few days was instantly swept away. "How is it?" Zhu Yao squatted beside the hole and asked worriedly. Yu Yin nodded. "This method is feasible. Big Sis Yao, I feel much more energetic now." Yu Ying replied as well. As expected, Zhu Yao was at ease. "Then I will bury you 2 deeper." She scattered a few handfuls of soil and just barely covered their feet. The 2 of them who had slimmed down earlier were suddenly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye, until they returned to their previous chubby appearance. They had even grown 2 centimeters taller. They grew up after scattering a handful of soil. If she continued, they wouldn't immediately sprout. right? Yu Yan's expression sank. It seems like our current appearances aren't our true forms. True forms? Zhu Yao was a little surprised. What he means is, Yu Ying continued, our human forms aren't complete. Zhu Yao sized up the two dolls. They did not lack any arms or legs. They were very complete. Just like how mortals need to experience time to grow. Yu Yin continued, most probably, we need to be buried deep in the soil before we can fully take human forms. I don't understand. Was he saying that one could only grow if they were buried in the soil? Yu Yin sighed. Our cultivation is recovering as well. In other words, they basically did not need to absorb any more spiritual energy. As long as they stayed in the soil, they could recover their cultivation while growing up. That was too convenient, wasn't it? Even Zhu Yao herself did not expect that she would actually receive such an unexpected reward from her stupid experiment. Then I will add a little more soil for you too. She instantly felt full of motivation. Casting a wind-type mystic art, she buried a few handfuls of soil into the pit, instantly filling up half of the pit. She was just about to continue her efforts. Suddenly, a sharp scream instantly interrupted her. She felt a gust of wind. Something was currently flying towards her, carrying a sharp killing intent. Zhu Yao reflexively waved her hand, summoning a vine and flung it towards the direction of the gust of wind. A ding sound could be heard. An icicle fell onto the ground, sinking 3 inches into the soil. How can you do this? Hurry and release Junior Marshal Brother Yu. Bug female Li Ling stood at the entrance, glaring at her with a furious look. You won't even let your own son off. You're basically not fit to be a mother. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Why did she always leave the house without taking her medicine? You're actually burying children who are only a few years old. Do you even have any humanity? Yi Ling looked at the 2 children whose bodies were still half buried in the soil with a pained look and criticized. Why are you here? After experiencing the eye poison incident in the Great Hall back then, Zhu Yao really did not have the slightest bit of good impression towards this Yi Ling. If I didn't come, how would I know that your heart is so vicious? Yi Ling ruthlessly glared at her. As though she was extremely furious, her face was flushed red. How am I vicious? The truth is right before your eyes. You still dare to quibble. Yi Ling pointed at the huge pit that was half buried. What did I do? You actually want to bury them alive. You're simply insane. Bury them alive? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched and she sighed. I say, girlie, you're delusional, right? Who said I want to bury them alive?
Cut the crap.
Yi Ling interrupted her words. Hurry and release Junior Marshal Brother Yu. Otherwise, I won't be polite to you. This temper of mine. I'm not going to let him go. Bite me then. Yi Ling's expression sank. Pulling out a spiritual talisman, she then threw it towards her. With a twist of Zhu Yao's hand, the vine from earlier whipped out, instantly breaking that spiritual talisman into 2. That talisman was activated halfway, when it was suddenly interrupted, and it immediately self-destructed. A loud boom could be heard. Yi Ling, who was the closest to it, was directly affected by it. Letting out a miserable cry, her face was instantly charred black. Zhu Yao immediately used the vine to bind her tightly. Earlier, she controlled the angle, so that talisman did not hurt her. She still wanted to struggle, but Zhu Yao immediately cast an art and tapped on her forehead, sealing her spiritual energy. In the face of absolute martial strength, all cheating devices were just paper tigers. Zhu Yao could not help but retort. She was just an essence stage practitioner, and her combat skills were even this terrible. Just where did she get the confidence to directly make a move against her? Should she say she was stupid, or stupid, or stupid? Release me. Seeing that she was powerless to resist, the paper tiger could only begin to bluff. If you dare to harm me, my master will not forgive you. Zhu Yao rolled her eyes, and then looked at the 2 little ones in the hole whose faces were cold. My master will not forgive you either. But what should she do about the current situation? Zhu Yao was a little troubled. No matter if today's matter was a misunderstanding or not, A grudge was already formed. She could be considered to have completely provoked this bug. Even if she were to tell her the truth now, she would instead reveal her own trump card. Junior Marshal Brother Yu, don't be afraid. Yiling suddenly turned to look at Yu Ying in the hole, and instantly changed into a gentle expression. Senior Marshal Sister will definitely save you. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Was this lady blind? Clearly, there were two people in the hole, yet she only saw Yu Ying. My master will come looking for you in a moment. I will definitely save you from the sea of bitterness. After saying that, she even looked at Zhu Yao meaningfully. Sea of bitterness. Zhu Yao, as expected, she was unable to communicate with a Mary Sue. Yet, as though Yu Ying's antenna suddenly malfunctioned, he did not even spare her a glance. Instead, he looked at Zhu Yao and sweetly said, Mother, this burying game is really fun. Bury us a little deeper. Game. Yiling was startled. Her earlier arrogance was instantly extinguished, and her face was filled with disbelief. This was actually just a game? Well done. Just as she was worrying about how she was going to explain herself, she had to give Yu Ying a thumbs up for his wit. Junior Marshal Brother Yu, you two are. Mother, Yu Ying continued to ignore her. He pulled out his hand from the ground and waved his little hands at Zhu Yao. Hurry, come over here. Amen. Zhu Yao released Yiling's restraints, walked over, and casually stroked Yu Ying's head. He was really too witty. Mother, bury me inside. Amen, Mother. Dig me out. Amen, Mother. Hug. Amen, Mother. Yu Ying suddenly pouted. Kiss. I knew you little scoundrel didn't have any good intentions. Zhu Yao flicked her finger on his forehead and dug out the two little ones. After being buried for so long, it was about time to continue tomorrow. Let's first grab them and wash them clean. Zhu. Senior Marshal Sister Zhu. Yiling spoke out with an awkward look. You're still here. Zhu Yao turned to look at her. Yiling seemed to want to say something. Goodbye. Zhu Yao immediately carried the two and entered the house. The words that were about to come out of her mouth were once again held back. Yiling's face was filled with embarrassment. She clenched her fists, and in an instant, her heart was filled with grievances. The reason she came today was because her master had the intention to take Yu Ying as his disciple, so she wanted to build a good relationship with her future junior marshal brother. Hence, the moment she saw junior marshal brother Yu being buried in the pit, she thought that Zhu Yao was going to harm him. She was simply worried about her fellow disciple. Clearly, that Zhu Yao was in the wrong. Which mother would bury her own son in the ground to play? Chapter 202. Zhu Yao really did not have any opinions towards Mary Sue. How people lived was their business, and she was not interested in butting in either. However, she hated white lotuses, especially fake white lotuses like Yiling. She did not know what Yiling said to her follower, Qi Ping, but on the second day, he came to her door aggressively. He kept on saying that he wanted to seek justice for her. Towards a brainless fan like him, the only way was to ignore him and let him do whatever he wanted. She had long set up a formation at the entrance, so no matter how fiercely he roared, he would not be able to enter. In just a few days, the outside world quieted down. Zhu Yao's thoughts were very simple. Before Yiling's main death-seeking storyline happened, she had to do her best to recover her own cultivation, especially her master and Yu Ying. They were formed from fruits, and in a certain sense, fruits were equivalent to seeds. This also explained why they could only grow in the soil. Regarding this, she planned to make a long-term plan. Using closed-door training as an excuse, she would bring the two dolls to squat in a pit. In order to prevent herself from encountering brainless people like Yiling, she decided to dig a pit in the backyard. Today, she planted two dolls, and when autumn came, she would be able to harvest two handsome men. Hee, just thinking about it made her a little excited. Yu Yin frowned. We will be entering deep slumber during this trip. You have to be more careful. Don't worry, I have already informed the manager of this place. I will be in closed-door training for the next few years, so no one will come. Just grow up peacefully. Yu Yin was still a little worried. He was extremely clear of his disciples' death-seeking abilities. Before your master recovers his cultivation, do not act recklessly. Understood. Yu Yao. Imin? Yu Yin habitually reached out his hand to stroke her head. Suddenly, he raised his head and planted a kiss on her lips. With a solemn voice, he said, "Be obedient." Her master took the initiative to express his love. She was still very excited. If he did not move a chair as a cushion before kissing her, she watched as the little Shota ran over to move the chair and heavily placed it in front of her. Then, he used his hands and legs to climb on it. After a long while, he pouted his little lips and planted a kiss on her lips. Other than saying, "It's been hard on you," Zhu Yao really could not bring up any romantic thoughts. She had to make her master grow up quickly. She had to, immediately. Zhu Yao had thought that, based on the growth speed she saw earlier, her master and Yu Ying should be able to recover their cultivation very quickly. She did not expect that they would be buried for 5 years. The two of them had grown from 4 or 5 years old to 12 or 13 years old, and their height had only doubled. Her master's appearance already had the appearance that she was familiar with, but Yu Ying was different. He was no longer that tall and skinny man from before. Instead, he was becoming more and more fair and gentle, looking more and more like Xiaobai. Although she knew that the two of them were the same person, this change still made her feel a little strange. In these 5 years, they had all been in deep slumber. Though Zhu Yao had placed down formations in the surroundings, she was still worried. Hence, she decided to stand guard at the side while raising her cultivation. Being distracted like this, naturally, her cultivation did not have much of an improvement. It merely rose from the first level of foundation to the second level, and it never rose again. Master, on the other hand, had directly reached the late stage of foundation establishment. This feeling of catching up was simply too annoying. Her authority as a mother was gone just like that. Big Sis Yao. The youth on the left suddenly opened his eyes. "Yu Ying, you're awake." Zhu Yao walked over. She did not expect that the first one to wake up would be Yu Ying, and hurriedly dug him out in a flurry. "How are you? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Yu Ying replied her with a smile, and his entire face turned gentle. "Big Sis Yao, don't worry. I have already completely transformed." He had faintly grown into the appearance of a youth, and his height had already reached her shoulders. When he smiled, it felt as though his entire body was enveloped in a gentle glow, and he was a little shockingly beautiful. Zhu Yao's heart ached for no reason. He looked even more like Xiaobai now. "Big Sis Yao?" Seeing that she was in a daze, Yu Ying tugged onto her sleeves. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Only then did Zhu Yao regain her senses. She held onto his hand and began to feel his pulse. After her resurrection, she had always subconsciously not thought about Xiaobai's matters. Back then, she forcefully sent him into the heavenly light of guidance, just to save his life. However, she never expected that it would backfire. Not only did she not save him, she even caused him to fall even deeper into the devil's path. Yu Ying was him, but also not him. She was unable to forget Xiaobai, but she was unable to treat Yu Ying as him either. Just like Wang Xiuji, even if Mushroom looked exactly the same as him, she was still unable to treat Mushroom as him. "Big Sis Yao." Yu Ying stroked her face with his hand. His eyes instantly sank, and a hint of something flashed past his eyes. "Why are you sad?" Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. She lightly coughed and slapped his hand. "Stop messing around. Your body is fine, and your cultivation is already at the foundation stage. However, Master..." She worriedly looked at the other person who was still in the pit. Yu Ying had already woken up, so why was there still no reaction from her master? Logically speaking, she was at the foundation stage when she transformed, and Yu Ying had already woken up when he was at the foundation stage as well. Her master was already at the late stages of foundation, so why wasn't he awake yet? Could it be that she wanted to water him? This wasn't gardening, hey? Before she could even figure it out, the sect master had already sent someone to look for her. "The sect master has ordered for you to bring junior marshal brother Yu Ying to the main hall." The disciple who came to deliver the message had an impatient look, as he looked at her with contempt. as though he was extremely disdainful. Zhu Yao did not know how she had offended him. However, she could roughly guess the reason why the sect master had summoned her. Most probably, it was because of Yu Ying's discipleship. After hesitating for a moment, she followed after that disciple. Before she left, she once again reinforced the formations in the courtyard. Just as they were about to enter the main hall, a pink figure came out to welcome them. With a passionate look, she sprinted towards Yu Ying, who was next to Zhu Yao. "Junior Marshal Brother Yu, you're finally here." Yiling's face was filled with the joy of reuniting after a long time. After sizing Yu Ying up for a moment, her eyes instantly shone several times brighter, and a hint of a shy expression actually surfaced on her face. Zhu Yao felt her heart skipping a beat. This Mary Sue couldn't be thinking of seducing her Yu Ying, right? He was still a child, after all. It's been 5 years. "Junior Marshal Brother Yu, have you been well?" Yiling suddenly turned to look at Zhu Yao meaningfully and gently said, "You don't have to be afraid. If you have any grievances, feel free to tell your senior marshal sister. I will help you." She meant that she knew how to mistreat Yu Ying? Zhu Yao frowned. Pulling Yu Ying behind her, she squeezed him in front of her, blocking her line of sight. "Junior Marshal Sister E, long time no see. You're a Mary Sue who hasn't logged off yet. Don't touch my son. I wonder if your talisman usage skills have improved? Do you still know how to explode talismans?" Her expression stiffened. Evidently, she recalled the incident where she self-destructed when she failed to use a talisman back then. She unwillingly called out, "Senior Marshal Sister Zhu Linger, this is Junior Marshal Brother Yu, the one with the full spirit veins." A green-robed man walked out from behind Yiling. He looked to be about 20 years old, and he looked very smooth. He wore a crown on his head and held onto a jade flute in his hand. He looked like an elegant young master. He sized up the two people in front of him for a moment and then turned to look at Yiling with a gentle expression. "Lanqi." Yiling recovered her innocent expression, looked at Yu Ying and said, "This is the disciple my master is going to take in this time." "Yu Ying?" The man's expression sank. He seriously looked at Yu Ying and said with a smile, "Having the cultivation of foundation at such a young age, his aptitude is indeed outstanding." Hearing this, Yiling's face was filled with shock, and her eyes that were looking at Yu Ying shone even brighter. "Junior Marshal Brother Yu, you've built your foundation. When did you build your foundation? Why didn't you inform me?" She suddenly looked at Zhu Yao with a reproachful gaze. "Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, this is your fault. Building your foundation is a huge matter. Why didn't you inform the sect? What if something happened?" Lanqi nodded as well, and the eyes he looked at Zhu Yao with carried a hint of dissatisfaction as well. The hell? This Mary Sue must be crazy. She really didn't forget to give her eyesore at every turn. "What does my son's foundation building have to do with you? Why should I inform you?" "Junior Marshal Sister, you don't have to worry. You know as well that my Yu Ying's aptitude is good. Building his foundation is a piece of cake for him, unlike others." Zhu Yao glanced at her. If she was not mistaken, she was still training in essence right now, right? It's been 5 years, and she still hasn't built her foundation. Yiling's expression paled, as she evidently understood the meaning behind her words. "Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, you." Her eyes reddened, as though she had suffered a huge grievance. "I'm just worried about Yu Ying, that's why." Seeing a beauty being wronged, the knight Lanqi was naturally unhappy as well. With a tight frown, he looked at Zhu Yao and faintly released the pressure of an Azoth core. "Junior Marshal Sister, why must you hurt others with your words? The hell? Which eye of yours saw her hurt others?" As expected, did the intelligence of men who approached Mary Sue all go offline? "Forget it, Lanqi." Yiling sniffled and forcefully said, "Master, Sect Master and the others have already been waiting for you in the Great Hall for a long time. Junior Marshal Brother Yu, today is the big day you're going to become his disciple. Hurry and enter." As she said that, she pulled Yu Ying. Before her hand could even touch him, she was repelled by a spiritual pressure. Lanqi's figure flashed and caught hold of her body that was repelled. His expression instantly sank as he glared at Yu Ying with fiery eyes. Just as he was about to berate him, he was interrupted. Yu Ying, who had been silent the entire time, finally turned his head and looked at the two of them. I don't like it when others touch me. Those eyes were ice cold and did not contain the slightest bit of emotion. Even though it was clearly an expressionless face, Lan Shi suddenly felt a chill, and it immediately seeped into his limbs and bones. Unknowingly, fear rose within him, and cold sweat instantly seeped out. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were swallowed back just like that. Mother, let's enter. Yu Ying turned his head and pulled Zhu Yao's hand. However, his face was filled with a warm smile. Oh, Zhu Yao could not be bothered to waste her breath on this pair of retards either, as she brought Yu Ying into the hall, leaving behind the two of them who were at a loss for words. Yiling never expected that she, who had always been successful among men, would be rejected by Yu Ying. Chapter 203. Zhu Yao's guess was not wrong. The reason why the sect master called them over was indeed to decide who would be Yu Ying's master. After some discussion, Xian Su emerged from the shadows, which meant that Yu Ying and Yi Ling were going to become disciples of the same person. If it was in the past, Zhu Yao would not object to it and treat it as a planted agent. However, after that incident at the entrance, she suddenly felt a little worried. That Yi Ling did not look like a good person, and he even possessed the Mary Sue halo. Although she was not against Yu Ying dating, however, she was against him dating a Mary Sue. She would rather Yu Ying be gay Apui. In any case, she would insist on opposing a Mary Sue who could lay her hands on an underage girl. She would not hesitate to be an evil mother-in-law. I have a master. Before even waiting for Zhu Yao to express her stance, Yu Ying rejected it himself. The Blue Parasol sect master was stunned. How is this possible? Who is your master? Yu Ying raised his head and glanced at Zhu Yao. His smile grew even gentler. Me? Zhu Yao blanked for a moment and carefully recalled. Back then, when they were in the cultivation world, she was indeed the one who guided his cultivation. However, back then, she had always been in closed-door training, and the one who truly taught him mystic arts was Little Radish, right? No wonder Yu Ying kept thinking about Little Radish. The Blue Parasol sect leader also understood that he had taken his mother as his master, so he tried to persuade him a little more. After all, with his great aptitude, it would be too much of a waste if he were to be apprenticed to a foundation establishment disciple. But Yu Ying remained unmoved. The faces of the senior leaders in the hall darkened, and the atmosphere became tense. Yu Ying, choose one. We still have to stay here. Zhu Yao had no choice but to send him a voice transmission. Big Sis Yao wishes for me to take someone else as my master? Yu Ying frowned. For now, just for now. Be good. Zhu Yao had no choice but to coax him. Dealing with Yu Ying really gave her a headache. Although he looked like he only had the cultivation of foundation, he was a devil in the first place. To him, whether these mystic arts of cultivation were his full strength, she did not know. Yu Ying smiled at her. All right, I will listen to Big Sis Yao. But don't worship Xuanxiu, and don't get close to Yi Ling, that Mary Sue. Do you understand? She didn't want him to really fall in love with that Mary Sue one day, and then go against her. Good. He smiled so widely that his eyebrows formed a line. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh. In the end, Yu Ying became the disciple of the only female among the three venerables, Venerable Xian Yin. Ever since he was slapped in the face, Xian Su's face had already turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He was extremely angry that Yu Ying did not know how to appreciate his kindness. With a cold snort, his figure flashed and flew away. Zhu Yao was not worried either. In any case, she did not do anything, yet Yi Ling was already targeting her in every aspect. She might as well shed all pretense of cordiality. All right, you've actually already chosen your master. Yu Ying, I hope that you will diligently cultivate and become a talent soon, spreading the mighty name of our Blue Parasol sect. The Blue Parasol sect master had no choice but to come out and say a few polite words. He then turned to look at Zhu Yao and said, Zhu Yao, you've entered the sect for a long time, and you're even a foundation disciple. Ewing doesn't need your care now, so you should go do the sect missions tomorrow. What? What was a sect mission? How could she not know? The so-called sect missions referred to disciples who were at the 5th level of Chi disciple and above. Every year, they had to go to the sect to complete the corresponding missions. Only by completing the missions could they exchange for sect contribution points. Only then could they exchange for sect resources. Previously, because of Yuan, they had been living in that house for free. Now that Yuan had acknowledged a master, they naturally had to move to where their master was. If she wanted to continue living there, she had to do missions. In other words, sect contribution points were the currency of Blue Parasol sect, and she needed them to pay her rent. Zhu Yao felt a slight headache. Her master had yet to wake up, so it wasn't appropriate for her to walk too far away. Just when she was worrying about what kind of mission she should accept, someone came knocking on her door. This person was none other than the Mary Sue female lead, Yiling, who had thrown all pretenses at her earlier. Girlie, you're actually secretly in love with me, right? Why are you always haunting me like a ghost? Yiling smiled in an extremely innocent manner. It's just subduing a demonic beast. It's not a difficult matter. I'm not going. Zhu Yao immediately rejected. She was an idiot. If she were to follow this white lotus, who knew how she would mess with her? Yiling tried her best to persuade her. This is your first time doing a sect mission. Wouldn't it be better if there are more people? Not good. She glanced at the man next to her and said, Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, Sect Master Lan Qi will be coming with us as well. Do you still remember him? His cultivation level is high, so there's no need to worry about any danger. Of course she remembered him. He was the brainless fan who had stopped her from entering the hall back then. He was also the sect leader who fell in love with her at first sight in the plot. Harem in characters, but I'm not going. Yiling's face was filled with sadness. Senior Sister Zhu, do you hate me that much? Zhu Yao sized her up for a moment and replied with a stern look, That's right. Yiling, number N, who had been standing to the side, finally could not hold it in any longer. Fellow Taoist Zhu, Junior Sister Ling, invited you sincerely. Is there a need for you to be so unreasonable? There's a need. Zhu Yao replied especially shamelessly. Lan Qi. Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, are you really not coming with me? Yiling did not give up. Zhu Yao turned around and was about to return to the house. Suddenly, her eyes flashed, and a conversation window popped up without any warning. Dear, a side quest has been triggered. Please complete it on time and in accordance with the rules. Mission 1. Accept the other party's mission request and complete the sect's mission. Accept or accept. What's with this sudden interruption of the system text? Side quest. Do you think that I can't do anything to you just because there are 2 identical options? So what if I don't accept it? The conversation window shook for a moment, and a line of words instantly appeared on top of it. Mission reward. Complete a side quest. Increase the size of your breasts by 1 cup. Zhu Yao. Humph. Do you think I'll fall for it just because you used your breasts to seduce me? Isn't it just long breasts? Small breasts and whatnot. I don't really mind it at all. She had long gotten used to the flat princess's life, so she wouldn't fall for it. The conversation window flashed once again, and the mission reward was instantly added with another bracket. When do we leave? Zhu Yao turned around and grabbed onto Yiling. What's integrity? I don't know. Yiling was startled. Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, you agreed? Amen. Zhu Yao nodded with a stern look. Everything is for the sect's glory. The location of the mission wasn't very far from Blue Parasol sect. Zhu Yao went to the mission hall to accept the mission, and along the way, she also received a set of sect mission equipment, a bottle of energy recovery pellets, a bottle of spiritual cleansing pellets, and a low-ranked flying sword. Before she left, she placed down a special formation around her master's surroundings, and instructed Yu Ying to pay attention to her master's situation at all times. Only then did she meet up with Yiling. Back then, Yiling said that they were going to hunt a low-ranked demonic beast, so she thought that there wouldn't be many people. Only when they met up did she realize that other than the 2 of them, there were 3 other people. Yiling's follower Senior Marshal Brother Qi Ping, The other was Fox Demon by E, and the last one was a woman she did not recognize. It had been a long time since she last saw Bai Yi. Evidently, he wasn't having a good time recently. His initially innocent and carefree expression was now tainted with a hint of worry. In the past, he loved to collect beautiful clothes the most, but now, he was wearing the plain sect's uniform. Though, his eyes were still looking at Yi Ling with infatuation. Emin, knowing that this guy wasn't having a good time, she felt at ease. It seemed like this silly fox had really fallen in love with Mary Sue. Senior Marshal Sister Zhu? Yi Ling waved at Zhu Yao from afar, with a passionate look. Why are you only here now? Everyone is already here, and we've been waiting for you for a long time. Fortunately, I had specially informed you yesterday, otherwise, it wouldn't be good if you were any later. Her seemingly unintentional words made it sound as though she was intentionally late. Clearly, this was the time to set off. This person was still constantly pulling aggro for her. Let's go. Zhu Yao did not want to bother with this bitch. In any case, she just had to silently complete her side quest. She had no interest in bickering with this girl. Zhu Yao summoned her flying sword. The others summoned their flying mystic artifacts one after another as well. Qi Ping and that unknown girl were all flying on swords. Bai Yi was a white spiritual feather, while Lan Qi and Yi Ling were riding on a jade flute, which was precisely the one he always held in his hand to act cool. The group of 6 chatted and laughed as they set off. Other than Zhu Yao, she basically did not want to speak. Even if Yi Ling had the intention to entice her to speak, she pretended not to hear it. As time passed, she no longer asked her. However, from their conversation, she managed to understand some information. The other girl was called Lin Xiang, and she was actually the daughter of the sect master of Blue Parasol sect. For some reason, she did not seem to be very happy, and she spoke very little on the journey. Occasionally, she would look towards Yi Ling and Lan Ling's direction. Zhu Yao could faintly smell the scent of gossip. After flying for about an hour, they finally arrived at their destination. It was actually a very large forest. Logically speaking, it was very normal for a demonic beast to appear in a forest like this. However, in this world, it was not normal. Because of the opposing relationship between demonic beasts and human practitioners, all demonic beasts were outside the barrier. That's right, where humans lived, there was a large barrier. If demonic beasts wanted to enter, they would have to break through the barrier. This was also the reason why she did not see any demonic beasts in the forest she woke up in. Every 100 years, this barrier would weaken once, and demonic beasts would take this opportunity to attack, which was known as a beast tide. Their mission this time was to deal with a 4th-rank demonic beast in this forest. A 4th-rank demonic beast was equivalent to a late-stage foundation practitioner. Though a few of them were essence practitioners, Lan Qi was an Azoth practitioner, and he was also a sect master. Most probably, he had quite a few mystic artifacts. Dealing with a 4th-rank demonic beast was a piece of cake. Zhu Yao did not understand. Why was an Azoth practitioner able to become a sect master? She felt that something was amiss, yet she could not recall what it was. They flew in the forest for an entire day, and though they had sensed the presence of demonic beasts several times, when they rushed over, they did not even see their shadows. Chapter 204. Senior Marshal Sister Zhu. Where do you think this demonic beast is hiding? Yi Ling once again came over, looking as though she wanted to discuss and analyze with her. Zhu Yao immediately stood up and walked away, without even replying. Being snubbed, Yi Ling's expression changed. She then turned around and started chatting happily with Lan Qi. Meanwhile, Lin Xiang, who was originally talking to Lan Qi, had a gloomy expression on her face. Actually, Zhu Yao had nowhere to go either, and she simply wanted to avoid coming into contact with Yi Ling. She was a chemical weapon, and without doing anything at all, she was still able to pull a bunch of hatred onto others. Looking around, she could only walk towards Bai Yi, whom she was relatively familiar with. Hey, go over a little. She had to pick a soft spot to pinch. Zhu Yao decisively chased the fox out of the shade of the tree and squatted by herself. Grand, grand immortal. Bai Yi was pushed down the tree by her, and only then did he turn his gaze back from Yi Ling's face. He looked at her in shock. You, why did you come to this forest as well? So this guy didn't know that she was in the team. He really didn't care about what was going on outside and only cared about the person he loved. Taking the opportunity when he regained his senses, Zhu Yao decided to inquire about some gossip. Let me ask you something. Is there something between that Lin Xiang and Lan Qi? Reverend Lan Qi was once senior sister Lin's fiancé. Seriously? She hadn't thought of this. Was? She noticed the word. Previously, Reverend Lan Qi had an engagement with senior sister Lin. After that, Lan Qi succeeded in forming his Azoth core. His cultivation was higher than senior sister Lin's, and he was even promoted to the position of sect master. He is not suitable for senior sister Lin, so the reason why he came to Blue Parasol sect this time is to break off the engagement. So he was also a scumbag. He's only an Azoth core, and he can become a sect master? Zhu Yao casually asked. The fox glanced at her in astonishment and said as if it was a matter of course. Once one enters the Azoth core realm, there are already very few core formation Taoists in the first place. The sect masters of the various sects are all Azoth cores, and the Blue Parasol sect is also the same. Wait a minute. You're saying that the sect master of the Blue Parasol sect is also an Azoth core cultivator? Bai Yi nodded. What about the three venerable ones? Nascent soul, of course. Fuck. Zhu Yao finally understood what was amiss. She was only at the foundation stage, so naturally, she was unable to see through the depths of people with higher cultivation levels than her. She had always heard people calling them sovereigns, so she had always thought that the so-called sovereigns were the same as the cultivation world in the past, referring to demigod practitioners. In that case, the sect leader should also be a nascent soul cultivator. Unexpectedly, what about the soul formation stage? Aren't there any spirit-severing cultivators? What's a soul formation stage? Fox was confused. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. There's no cultivation level higher than nascent soul? Of course not. The fox nodded. If it's higher than nascent soul, then wouldn't it be ascending? No one ascended. The fox chuckled as if she had just told a joke. Ascending to become an immortal is just a legend. It's not worth believing. Hello, I'm legendary. She found it hard to believe that the cultivation base of this world was actually so low. One more question, Zhu Yao softly asked. Do you know why it's better to have more spirit veins? The more spiritual roots you have, the more spells you can learn. The fox earnestly said, if you only have a single spiritual root, then you can only practice that spiritual root. For example, if you have a fire spiritual root, then you can only use fire spiritual techniques. Naturally, the more spirit roots, the better. Who said that? That's right. Fox raised his hand and suddenly a ball of fire appeared in his palm. For example, I have fire, wood, and earth tri-spiritual roots. I only have these three types of spiritual chi in my body, so I can only use these three types of spells. I can't use water spells. Zhu Yao finally understood where the problem lied. The people of this world did not know how to convert spiritual energy. It should be said that there was no concept of converting spiritual energy at all. Could it be that his physique was different? Zhu Yao silently circulated her spiritual energy, converting the wood's spiritual energy into water spiritual energy. In an instant, a few water droplets appeared on her palm. If it wasn't their bodies, then it could only be that they didn't know about the spirit chi conversion at all. It was no wonder that they would regard a single spirit root as a waste spirit root. During a battle, the more spells one could use, the more advantages they would have, especially when the opponent had a spiritual root that could restrain them. If they could only use spells of a single element, they would definitely lose. It was just that the 5 elemental magical arts were mutually reinforcing and mutually restraining. They only knew that they were mutually restraining each other, but they didn't understand the method of mutually reinforcing each other. Zhu Yao, who accidentally found out the truth, simply wanted to chuckle. Sure enough, uncultured people were terrifying. Serves you right for not having a high cultivation level. Fortunately, she found out about it in time. Otherwise, if she were to encounter demonic beasts and habitually used lightning-type mystic arts, she would definitely be surrounded and stared at like Godzilla. Yiling, don't push your luck. Suddenly, with a pa sound, something fell onto the ground. Not far away, the girly Lin Xiang was currently glaring at student Mary Sue with a furious expression. Senior Marshal Sister Lin, don't be angry, all right? What did Linger do wrong? Isn't it good for her to apologize to you? Yiling sat on the ground with an innocent look, her eyes faintly glistening with tears. Zhu Yao turned to look at her. Were they finally going to fight? Lin Xiang, what are you doing? Follower Qi Ping was the first to rush out. Holding Yiling up from the ground, he glared at Lin Xiang. Why did you make a move on Linger? I basically didn't touch her at all. She fell on her own. Nonsense. This place is flat. How could Junior Marshal's sister possibly fall on her own? Do you think we're blind? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Follower, you're really blind. No matter if you believe it or not, I didn't push her. Lin Xiang still angrily said. Qi Ping grew even more furious. Lin Xiang, you've always been stubborn and mischievous. Yiling has never been calculative with you. So why do you have to keep targeting her? I'm targeting her? Lin Xiang widened her eyes as she laughed out of anger. Just who's targeting who, she knows very well in her heart. Senior Marshal Sister Lin. Yiling wanted to say something, but she hesitated. The expression on her face grew even more aggrieved. Junior Marshal Sister E, you don't have to care about her. Qi Ping consoled with heartache. She was spoiled rotten by the sect master. That's why she's so arrogant and despotic. Qi Ping, speak clearly. Who's arrogant and despotic? Yiling, Senior Marshal brother, forget it. Junior Marshal sister, you don't have to be afraid. Qi Ping was enraged as well, as he glared at Lin Xiang. If you dare to bully Yiling again, I won't be polite to you. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Lin Xiang immediately summoned her spiritual sword. What happened? At this moment, Lan Qi, who went out to investigate, returned. He looked at the two of them, and when he saw Yiling's aggrieved look, his expression instantly sank. Hurriedly walking over, he immediately pulled Yiling into his embrace. Linger, what's wrong? Yiling did not speak. Instead, she turned to look at Lin Xiang at the side. Lan Qi's expression sank even further, and without even thinking, he said to Lin Xiang, Xianger, apologize to Linger. Lin Xiang was startled, as she looked at Lan Qi in disbelief. You think that I was the one who pushed her as well? Lan Qi's expression grew even more solemn. Lin Xiang suddenly smiled. Her smile was filled with misery, as she coldly glanced at Yiling, taking a deep breath, as though she was trying to suppress the rage in the depths of her heart. She said with emphasis on every word, Fine, Yiling, don't you want him? If you like him, then take him. From now on, you and I are strangers. After saying that, she turned around and walked into the forest alone. However, none of the people present took a step forward. Zhu Yao sighed. As expected, behind every Mary Sue lay a large group of cannon fodder. Senior Marshal Sister Lin will be fine, right? Yiling suddenly asked with a worried expression. Just as Lan Qi was about to console him, Zhu Yao, who had been watching the show, could not help but speak up. If you're worried, why don't Junior Sister E chase after them to take a look? Yiling's face stiffened, and she immediately fell silent. Zhu Yao silently rolled her eyes. She knew it. If he really wanted them to stay, why would he wait until they were far away? Wait, I'll go with you. Zhu Yao nimbly chased after Lin Xiang. As soon as these words came out, everyone present was stunned. You? Lin Xiang looked at her in shock. I believe you didn't push her. Why?
Because.
Zhu Yao turned to glance at Yiling and said meaningfully, I have experience with this, right? Junior, Marshal, Sister, E. When they first met, didn't she use the same trick? Yiling's face paled, but she pretended not to hear anything and buried her head into Lan Qi's chest. Zhu Yao did not care about her reaction either, as she had long wanted to find a chance to leave the group. Compared to a fake White Lotus like Yiling, she was much more willing to be with a fiery girl like Lin Xiang. Who knew if she would become the next cannon fodder? Roar! Roar! Before she could even begin her plan to leave the group, a loud roar suddenly resounded. A huge shadow instantly appeared in front of her eyes. Zhu Yao's heart sank as she grabbed onto Lin Xiang, who was the closest to her. With her fastest speed, she dodged to the side. On the flat ground where they were resting, a gigantic demonic beast was currently baring its teeth in the direction where the four people were standing. This demonic beast was at least 3 stories tall, and its entire body was covered in scales. Its outer appearance, however, looked a little like a bear, and there were even 3 horns on its head that looked like steel blades. The hell? What happened to the promised 4th-rank demonic beast? Seeing a beastie like this, Zhu Yao simply wanted to say, "Run!" She casually grabbed onto Lin Xiang, summoned her flying sword, and sprinted with all her might. Senior Marshal Sister Zhu? Just as she flew up, Yiling blocked her path with her flying sword and even grabbed onto her hand. Now that the demonic beast has appeared, we should work together to kill it. How can you escape at the last moment? Escape your sister. Move aside. If you don't escape now, you won't be able to escape. The hell? Zhu Yao even had the heart to kill her now. Yiling, however, had a joyous expression. Could it be that Senior Marshal Sister Zhu recognizes this demonic beast? She recognized it. She recognized it too much. Among all the demonic beasts, Zhu Yao was most familiar with this one. Because this was the Rise Fire beast that had crippled her back then in Tasioluk. Roar! A loud roar once again resounded. The gigantic figure that was still on the ground earlier, with a flash, instantly appeared in front of them. Zhu Yao's heart instantly turned cold. It's over. Yiling, however, turned around and cast an art. In an instant, an icicle appeared in the air. Don't use ice. Zhu Yao sent a slap over, instantly interrupting her incantation. Yiling's legs were unstable, and she fell from the sky. The Rise Fire beast was already pouncing towards them, and Zhu Yao had no choice but to bring Lin Xiang and fly down as well, narrowly dodging this pounce. Junior Marshal Sister E. Qi Ping flew over and caught the falling Yiling, and angrily began to make things difficult for Zhu Yao. Are you crazy? Why did you interrupt her incantation and even pushed her? Shut up! Zhu Yao ruthlessly glared at him, which stunned Qi Ping for a moment. Zhu Yao did not have the time to care about him, because the Rise Fire beast had disappeared again. Everyone, set up a barrier, hurry. Other than Lin Xiang, who obeyed, the others all had confused looks. Just what are you trying to do? Zhu Yao could not be bothered with them, as she tried to release her divine sense to sense the Rise Fire beast's location. Unfortunately, the difference in their ranks was too huge, and she was basically unable to sense it. Listen to her. Lan Qi flew over. His expression sank quite a bit. His cultivation was the highest here, so naturally, he could sense that something was amiss. That's most likely not a 4th-rank demonic beast. Only then did everyone's expressions change. Yiling asked with a shocked look, if it's not 4th-ranked, then what is it? Lan Qi turned to look at Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao clenched her fists. Rise Fire beast, impervious to fire and water. 6th-ranked demonic beast. Gasps could be heard from the crowd. 6th-ranked was equivalent to an Azoth paragon. Even Lan Qi, who had the highest cultivation amongst them, had just formed his Azoth core. Adding that demonic beasts were stronger than practitioners of the same cultivation level in the first place. They basically had no chance of victory. Zhu Yao was someone who had truly fought against a Rise Fire beast. Back then, they had so many Azoth practitioners, yet they were unable to gain any advantage from the Rise Fire beast, let alone now when they were merely Foundation and Essence practitioners. Hence, her first reaction was to flee. But that bitch, Mary Sue. What do we do now? Qi Ping panicked as well. Summoning his weapon, he anxiously looked at his surroundings. Lan Qi did not reply. Instead, He looked towards Zhu Yao. Everyone's gazes were instantly drawn over as they stared at her. What to do? Just wait for death. This time, her master would not be able to save her. He himself was still in the ground. Junior Marshal Sister Zhu, you're the only one here who has seen this demonic beast. How do you think we should deal with it? Lan Qi asked. Try your best to drag it out and ensure your own little life. Zhu Yao looked towards Yiling at the side. You have a sound transmission talisman, right? Hurry and send a message back to the sect and have a nascent soul practitioner come over. Yiling's expression changed as she softly said, but Master is currently in closed-door training. Then just wait for death. Zhu Yao immediately interrupted her words. Everyone's faces turned ashen. Yiling once again put on that wrong look, however. This time, no one bothered with her. Everyone was anxiously waiting for the Rise Fire Beast's next appearance. Only then did Yiling reluctantly take out her sound transmission talisman. Raising her hand, just as she was about to activate it, her sleeves slightly trembled. However, it was facing upwards, as though a light breeze had swept past. Zhu Yao, who had been paying attention to her surroundings the entire time, instantly realized it. Scatter! Zhu Yao shouted out, as she casually pushed Yiling in the opposite direction. She then flew towards the back with her flying sword at an extreme speed. Seemingly in a blink of an eye, a black figure appeared above, and it pounced straight towards the direction where the few people were earlier. She realized it in time, and had already dodged. Yiling had also been pushed out of the attack range by her. After all, Lan Qi was an Azoth practitioner, and his reaction was the fastest. Bai was a beast in the first place, so he had a strong sense of danger. Hence, the two of them dodged. As for Lin Xiang, she was grabbing onto her earlier and forgot to let go, so naturally, she escaped as well. Chapter 205. Zhu Yao seemed to be able to see the cold glint reflected off the Rise Fire Beast's claws, and without the slightest bit of hesitation, it slashed down towards Qi Ping. He was instantly sent flying several tens of meters away, puking out a mouthful of blood, and his chest was already a bloody mess. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. When everyone regained their senses, Qi Ping was already on his last breath. Senior brother Qi. Yiling cried out, the blood draining from her face. She looked pained, but she didn't move a single step. That was why she hated white lotus flowers the most. Taking advantage of the fact that the Rise Fire Beast had yet to flash, Zhu Yao cast an art, summoning dozens of vines to wrap around its body. At the same time, she signaled to Lin Xiang, go check if he's dead or not. Lin Xiang reacted and flew towards Qi Ping's direction. She took out a Qi returning pill and fed it to him. The Rise Fire Beast's strength was extremely great, and Zhu Yao's vines were basically unable to control it for long. Naturally, Lan Qi had realized this problem as well. Hence, he materialized hundreds of spiritual swords and consecutively attacked the Rise Fire Beast. However, he could only hear a series of ding-ding-ding sounds, and the spirit swords were all knocked onto the ground. The Rise Fire Beast's scales were impervious to fire and water, so he was completely unable to harm it in the slightest. Instead, he had caused it to struggle even more fiercely. Zhu Yao nearly puked out blood from controlling herself as she turned her head and shouted, use your sword intent. Lan Qi's expression instantly paled as he looked at the Rise Fire Beast a little helplessly. It can't be that you haven't comprehended sword intent yet, right? Zhu Yao widened her eyes. His expression became even more awkward. What's the use of keeping you then? How dare he call himself a golden core cultivator when he had not even comprehended the sword intent? Zhu Yao was already beginning to feel that her stamina was running out. In just a few minutes, a large half of the dozen or so vines had already been broken off by the Rise Fire Beast, and only the ones on its four limbs and hooves were still preserved. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. This time, he couldn't care less whether he was exposed or not. He immediately converted the lightning spiritual energy into a lightning guiding art and was about to activate it. Let me help you. However, Yiling's delicate shout could be heard, and in an instant, a large amount of heavenly fire poured down. Zhu Yao widened her eyes and could only mutter out a single sentence. The hell? What a pig-like teammate. That fire burned very fiercely, and it directly surrounded the rise fire beast, and at the same time, burnt the vines that she summoned out completely.
Success.
The pig cheered. Zhu Yao. Ho suddenly, an angry roar resounded from within the fire. The fire that was raging just a moment ago. It was decreasing at a rate visible to the naked eye. The red scales of the demonic beast were all absorbed by its scales. How is this possible? Yiling's face was filled with disbelief. Please, if you have nothing to do, can you read more books? Didn't he say that he was impervious to fire and water? Since ice was useless, fire was also useless to it. The rise fire beast was already enraged. After letting out a loud roar, it opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flames. He headed straight for Yiling. Yiling couldn't dodge in time and was burned by the fire. She let out a blood-curdling scream. There was a flash of light on her body, and the flames instantly disappeared. There must be a fire-repelling spell formation on her Dharma robe. Clothes could be fireproof, but that didn't mean that other parts of the body could. Her hair was still burnt, and there were still flames burning at the ends of her hair. Linger. Lan Shi flew over worriedly. Originally, water was the most suitable method to extinguish a fire. However, Lan Shi didn't have a water spirit vein. Hence, he had no choice but to cast an earth-type mystic art and bury Yiling's head in dirt. In an instant, a beautiful lady was buried into a terracotta warrior. Zhu Yao. Why did she feel like they were about to break up? The rise fire beast immediately rose into the sky, and Zhu Yao's heart clenched for a moment. The hell? Lan Shi and Yiling were too close. The rise fire beast would definitely, the hell? What was the meaning of it coming towards her? Clearly, she was the furthest away. Yet this beastie was giving up on what was close at hand to seek what was further away. Did it think that she was easy to bully? Roar the rise fire beast was coming at her fiercely. Zhu Yao dodged to the side with her sword and watched as it pounced on empty air. The rise fire beast's figure flashed, and it suddenly disappeared. Mama's egg, it turned invisible again. Zhu Yao wanted to curse out, however. She suddenly felt a gust of wind sweeping towards her back. She instantly felt her heart turning cold. In an instant, a beast claw pressed onto her barrier, and an immense pressure came crashing towards her. Zhu Yao was instantly pressed onto the ground from the sky. Why was she always the one getting injured? What's so amazing about the Mary Sue cheat? A loud bang resounded, and Zhu Yao felt that her life was no longer able to endure. This demonic beast sure had a heavy appetite. It actually wanted to use its body weight to crush her to death. Zhu Yao simply wanted to spit out one last word, however. She suddenly felt the ground beneath her was empty, and she was instantly sinking. In the next moment, she felt her entire body was falling, and her surroundings were filled with darkness. A few loud rumbling sounds could be heard, as though something was collapsing. The ground was very deep, and Zhu Yao only crashed onto the ground a few dozen seconds later. She stopped, and her defensive barrier shattered the moment she landed on the ground as well. Neither the human nor the beast were able to react to this sudden turn of events. However, Zhu Yao knew that this was an opportunity. Without any hesitation, she immediately circulated the spiritual energy in her entire body and summoned her sword intent. A lightning phoenix soared into the sky, and in an instant, it illuminated the entire space. Zhu Yao could faintly see stone pillars that looked like palaces. The rise fire beast was still pressing down on her body, and the lightning phoenix charged straight down. Just as it was about to injure its target, suddenly, a fiery red light shone on the ground. A formation lit up, and the human and beast's figures flashed, instantly disappearing from where they stood. The lightning phoenix missed, emitted out a long cry, and slowly disappeared into the air. Zhu Yao, who was teleported to another location, simply wanted to silently curse out. Your brother-in-law. Zhu Yao basically did not have the time to size up the place she was at, as the rise fire beast had already regained its senses. Still pressing down on her with its paw, its gigantic head slowly lowered. She could even feel the cold air coming from its long fangs, and a dense stench of blood assaulted her senses. Her entire body no longer had a single strand of spiritual energy, and she was basically unable to resist. She could only watch as that gigantic beast head approached closer, closer, and closer. Then, it opened its ferocious mouth, and towards her, licked her.
Meow.
Zhu Yao's heart, which was raised high, instantly fell onto the ground. What the hell was Meow? Fall. That gigantic beast head tilted its head and rubbed against her body with narrowed eyes. In an instant, her entire body was pushed to the side, and a childlike voice resounded next to her ears. I like you. Zhu Yao. What's with this completely immobilized rise-fire beast? What happened to the promised domineering rise-fire beast that was impervious to fire and water? What happened to the promised one and only childhood nightmare in the beast world? Is it really all right for you to switch roles like this? I really like. The rise-fire beast, however, seemed to be shouting out a slogan. It continuously repeated this word. The tail on its back seemed to be convulsing as well. It wildly swept left and right and swayed about crazily, emitting out loud rumbling sounds. Are you a dog? Meow. The rise-fire beast was still happily rubbing against her. Zhu Yao was basically being dragged on the ground by its rubbing.
Stop.
Zhu Yao had no choice but to stop its friendly actions. Sighing deeply, she said, "Let me go first." She felt that this scene was a little familiar. Meow. The rise-fire beast obediently released its paw. Lying on the ground, it widened its pair of bell-like large eyes, looking at her with sparkling starlight, and it even continuously repeated, I really like. Looking at this beast which had suddenly changed its style, she was speechless. In the past, when she was a dragon, it was understandable for demonic beasts to have a natural liking for her. However, she was clearly a tree demon now. Why would beasts still like her? Zhu Yao crawled up with a darkened expression and patted off the dirt on her body. The rise-fire beast tilted its head. It passionately approached her and stretched out its large tongue to lick her body, smearing her face with saliva. Lick clean. I'll help you. I like. That immature voice once again sounded. No need. Zhu Yao pushed its beast head away. Is there anyone who is willing to help like this? Meow. Its towering ears drooped down in an instant as it looked at her with a disappointed expression. Zhu Yao ignored its resentful little eyes and began to inspect her surroundings. This place seemed to be an underground ruin, and it looked like a gigantic palace. The surroundings were filled with stone pillars that were several meters tall, and the walls were embedded with fire spirit stones used for illumination. However, it was still very dark. The place she was standing at should be a corridor. The corridor was very long, and she could not see the end with a single glance. Beastie, do you know where this place is?
Meow.
The rise-fire beast tilted its head. You don't know? She even thought that it was the guardian beast of this place. It's the Lord's place, it suddenly said. Zhu Yao was startled. What Lord's place? The rise-fire beast narrowed its eyes, and then began to rub against her body. Beastie likes you, likes. Sixth-ranked demonic beasts had yet to fully develop their spiritual intelligence. It seemed like she would not be able to get any information out of it, so she had no choice but to take a look. Are you familiar with this place? Meow. The beast nodded. Then, can you bring me to meet that lord? Meow. It continued to nod. Then let's go. Just as she was about to walk forward, a gigantic paw suddenly stretched out in front of her. Claw. The rise-fire beast looked at her with sparkling eyes, and its face was filled with anticipation. It once again began to repeat as though it was chanting scriptures. Claw, 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 claw. You're a transmigrator as well, right? You even know to shake hands when cooperating. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She had no choice but to take a step forward and hug onto the gigantic beast claw in front of her. As though she was moving something, she moved it left and right a few times. The rise fire beast's eyes shone even brighter as it raised its claws and cried out excitedly, as though it had suddenly received some kind of great reward. Paw! She grabbed my paw. I don't want to wash my paw anymore. That's enough. Can you beasts have a normal brain? I'm leaving. Zhu Yao's expression darkened as she headed towards the end of the corridor. The rise fire beast raised one of its paws with an expression of appreciation and followed after them with its 3 legs. Zhu Yao thought this corridor was very long, and even after walking for an hour, Zhu Yao had yet to reach the end. However, the surrounding pillars were engraved with various kinds of runes, and there were even some diagrams. She faintly felt that these runes were a little familiar, yet she could not recall where she had seen them before. Therefore, it was decided that it would be 3 in the morning. Yes, she was that capricious. Chapter 206. The deeper she walked, the brighter the light became. Along the way, she did not encounter any traps or the like. She was still rejoicing in her heart when suddenly a white light flashed in her surroundings. Spiritual swords appeared in the air one after another, flying towards her. The hell! She couldn't dodge it this time. In the nick of time, the rise fire beast, which had been quietly bouncing, leaped forward, blocking in front of Zhu Yao. Those spiritual swords struck onto its scales and disappeared as they fell onto the ground. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you. Meow, the rise fire beast had a prideful look. Lowering its head to take a look, it realized that the paw it carefully protected had already fallen onto the ground. Its ears drooped down, as though it had suffered some sort of injury, and began to whimper. Paw. My paw. It's not like it broke. Was there a need to do this? Enough. When we get out later, I will help you hold all 4 of my paws, all right? Its eyes shone once again. Zhu Yao began to carefully inspect the corridor. Earlier, when the spiritual swords appeared, she clearly sensed the ripples of a formation. She looked around for a moment and realized that on the stone pillar on the left, there was an offensive formation engraved. It was a formation that gathered spiritual energy to form a sword formation. However, the runes on it were a little ancient and did not look like the runes of the current era. Instead, they looked a little like the sealing runes her master had taught her back then. Zhu Yao frowned. It seemed like this place wasn't very safe either. As she continued to walk forward, she became a little more careful. As expected, she discovered a different formation on the pillar in front of her. The deeper she walked, the more complicated those formations became. She carefully circled around them, and instantly, she became a little more anxious. After walking for about an hour, she finally reached the end. A gigantic stone door appeared in front of her. She saw the lifelike carvings on the door. The gigantic demonic beast which had its eyes closed. Zhu Yao felt the malice of the entire world. Lord, Lord, Lord. The rise fire beast excitedly hopped around in front of the door. Suddenly, a blinding white light emitted out from the door. The terrifying demonic beast engraved on it came to life, and a terrifying pressure came from all directions. Even the entire ground began to shake. That gigantic demonic beast suddenly opened its eyes, revealing a pair of blood-red pupils that were several times larger than the rise fire beast's. Who are you? The beast spoke in human language, its voice as loud as a bell. It reverberated in the surroundings for a long time. There was also a huge stench of blood coming towards them. Zhu Yao did not reply. The gigantic beast on the door looked around, and its line of sight stopped on Zhu Yao. Its killing intent was overflowing. You're actually a practitioner. A trifling foundation establishment cultivator was also able to reach here. Then, his murderous aura suddenly intensified quite a bit. His blood-red eyes narrowed slightly as he said in a deep voice, "I'll just eat you to my heart's content." That terrifying beast head. Suddenly, it stretched out from the door and opened its bloody mouth towards Zhu Yao. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, gathering the spiritual energy that she had accumulated with much difficulty earlier. He raised his hand and slapped it. Pa! A crisp sound echoed. The giant beast was instantly enraged.
Roar.
He opened his mouth and bit towards her. Zhu Yao sighed. Just as it was about to touch her, he shouted, "Sesame!" The beast's head was stunned. Its eyes widened as it stared at the person standing in place. It even blinked its eyes in disbelief. "Why are you inside?" Zhu Yao felt a slight headache. "Mas, mistress?" The demonic beast's voice instantly lowered by a few tones, and its blood-red eyes began to turn misty. It's really you?" Zhu Yao looked around. "Why are you locked in the door again?" "Mistress." Sesame seemed to have only just confirmed the person in front of him. His tears splashed out, 1 drop, 2 drops. In just a few moments, it was as though a faucet had been opened as they flowed out. "Wah, mistress. You've finally come to find this beastie. Wah." This beastie thought that he would never be able to see you again. "Mistress. Mistress. Wah. Enough. Enough. Stop crying." Such a huge beast. If it continued to cry, its water would swell, you know? Wah. Sesame, however, continued to vent its grievances and cried until it could not catch its breath. "Mistress, you don't love this beastie at all, and only came to find me now. Wah, could she say that she was not here to find it in the first place?" Looking at its uncontrollably sad look, Zhu Yao decided not to tell it this cruel truth. All right, aren't I here now?" She stroked the beast's head. "Tell me, just what happened? Didn't you return to the demonic immortal continent?" Only then did Sesame stop crying. As it sniffled, it said with a complaining tone, feeling wronged, "Mistress, the beasties of the demonic immortal continent bullied me. They despised me for having signed a contract with a deity practitioner and having the aura of a deity practitioner on me. This beastie returned to find you, but mistress wasn't around. Later on, this beastie had nowhere to hide and was captured. The palace master then threw me into the lower realm again, and even said that I would never be able to return. So the reason why he was chased down was because of her. Wait a minute. Again?" Zhu Yao caught onto a keyword. "You have an old grudge with that so-called palace master?" Sesame's expression stiffened, and its eyes began to wander. Zhu Yao's eyes sank. "Speak the truth." Sesame's large mouth flattened and looked at her pitifully. It's a little misunderstanding, Emin. It's mainly because this beastie, am simply too handsome." It shook its head. "I accidentally caught the eye of the princess, and the palace master forced me to marry her. I wasn't willing, so he chased me down to the lower realm." The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. "Are you sure that she's the one who's secretly in love with you, and not the one who's plotting something against her? How's that possible?" Sesame said with a stern look. "Why would I like her? You don't even know this, but though she's a princess, she's a beastie with only 2 legs. I'm a handsome beast with 4 legs. There's no way I'll marry someone with 2 legs. What did this have to do with legs? Are you sure that it wasn't because you abandoned her, and that's why her father stood up for his daughter?" "I've only seen her once," Sesame said with an unfortunate look. "Back then, it was also because I ran away from my marriage, which was why I was sealed in that mustard seed dimensional space and thrown down to the lower realm. I never expected that after so many years, she's still lusting after my beauty. Woo, mistress, this beastie's life is so bitter. You Godzilla, where did your beauty come from, hey?" Zhu Yao sighed. Pointing to the place where it resided, she continued to ask, "And then? And why were you sealed in this door?" "I don't know either." Sesame shook its head. "When I descended to the lower realm, I simply felt that something was guiding me over here. When I woke up, I was already on this door. I tried many times, but I could only stretch my head out from this door and was basically unable to escape. That's why I wanted to gather demonic beasts of the same species over to help me break this seal. In the end, I waited for 200 years and only encountered a single rise fire beast. Meow, the rise fire beast obediently responded. After that, I decided to lure human practitioners over and see if they had any solutions. In the end, Mistress, you came. The more it spoke, the sadder it felt, and its tears once again looked like they were about to overflow. Mistress, this beastie is so pitiful. Isn't this what you asked for? Back then, how good would it have been if it had stayed in Lightning Divine Hall? It just had to return to the demonic, immortal continent to seek torture. This beastie knows its wrongs. Mistress is so incredible. You definitely know how to remove this formation. Mistress, save me. Zhu Yao raised her head and looked at the flowing characters on the door. Sesame had really guessed correctly. She really knew how to remove it. This isn't a formation. Zhu Yao frowned. Ah, this is a seal. Those familiar characters were the runes of a seal. This arrangement and the ripples of aura, this was clearly a devil restraining seal. This is a low-level sealing art used to restrain devils. Devil? Sesame was startled for a moment, and then began to twist. But this beastie is a beast. This was something she could not understand as well. Although the devil restraining seal was only a low-level sealing art, it would only react to devils. Unless, Sesame, when you were sealed in here, the injuries you received back then had yet to fully recover, right? Sesame nodded. As expected, back then, it was heavily injured by Yu Ying. Yu Ying was a devil, so naturally, there would be remnants of devilish energy on its wounds. This was also a low-level sealing art, so it was directly sealed in as a devil. Sesame, you bitter bastard. I will let you out now. Retract your head back. All right, Meow. I knew Mistress is the best, Meow. Sesame happily retracted its head. Zhu Yao sat cross-legged and took a deep breath. During the journey earlier, the spiritual energy in her body had recovered a little. This time, she would have to hand it all over again. She circulated her spiritual energy, turning them into thin, spiritual threads. Then, she wrapped them around those runes, following the circulation method of the seal, and then, she pulled them in the opposite direction. A moment later, the door began to emit out a white light, which grew brighter and brighter. A circular formation suddenly appeared on the door like a projection, and it was constantly spinning. Until the words on it could no longer be seen clearly, a ray of light directly flew out from within. The circular formation slowly dimmed, and then it disappeared. In front of Zhu Yao, there was already an additional baby-faced young man. The sleeves of his white robes even had a familiar pattern of auspicious clouds. It was the uniform of ancient hill sect in the past. Mistress. The young man leapt up and pounced towards her. Zhu Yao threw a slap onto his face, and with a strong push, she stood up. Sesame immediately laid on the ground. As though it had already gotten used to her violence, it hugged onto her thigh instead and rubbed against her with a satisfied look. I'm finally out. Master really loves Beastie the most. Oh, Beastie wants to give birth to monkeys for you. Scram. Zhu Yao kicked away this sticky candy. After taking a closer look, the door earlier had already disappeared, and there were 2 additional pillars that were the same as the ones in the corridor. Suddenly, there were 6 more forks in the road ahead. Every single one of them was bottomless, and no one knew where they led. Was this the rhythm of entering a maze? Therefore, it was decided that it would be 3 in the morning. Yes, she was that capricious. My apprentice is dead again. This chapter is Chapter 206C, The Old Beast Again. Chapter 207. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched as she turned around and walked back. Was he treating her as a fool? One look at this place, and one could tell that it was a place of death. As a foundational practitioner who had exhausted all of her spiritual energy, there was no way she would send herself to death. Furthermore, Sesame had been saved. Just based on a 10th-ranked demonic beast like him, returning to the surface would be a piece of cake. Ding! As soon as she turned around, another dialogue box popped up in front of her. Renwashing of the Three Realms treasure hunting system at your service. Start or start. What's with the treasure hunting system? Is this the navigation system from last time? If you want to change the name, don't show the word navigation. Do you think I can't recognize it just by adding a parenthesis? Even if you're being perfunctory, you can't be like this. You must have typed the wrong word, right? Call yourself Invincible East if you have the guts. Ding. The Invincible East of the Three Realms treasure hunting system is at your service. Zhu Yao. Flips table. I don't want to go treasure hunting. Bite me. Ding. Side mission 1. The target has appeared. Please follow the prompts. My chest hurts. Zhu Yao took a deep breath and silently clicked start. Everything was for her breasts. She was so flexible. All the dialogue boxes disappeared, and a green arrow appeared in his line of sight. Up ahead, the third intersection from the left, go straight. Sesame, let's go. Dragging the person who was still hugging onto his thigh, he walked towards the third intersection. After thinking for a moment, he stopped, turned around, looked at the Rise Fire Beast behind him, and said, "You stay here." Meow, the Rise Fire Beast's eyes were instantly filled with tears. "You're too big, and you can't transform. It'll be very dangerous if you go with us. You can wait here or go out and play by yourself. Understand?" Meow. The Rise Fire Beast nodded and looked at her with starry eyes. "Be obedient." Zhu Yao reached out her hand to stroke its big head. Meow. The Rise Fire Beast's eyes instantly turned red, and that tender voice once again sounded. She touched my head. She touched my head. Beastie will never wash his hair again. Fuck you. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. Bringing Sesame along, she quickly walked towards that path. Along the way, Zhu Yao had raised her guard by 120%. Though she had a trump card like Sesame, and the cultivation levels of the practitioners in this world were all on the low side, there shouldn't be any danger. But that devil binding seal just now. However, she was a little worried. That was a sealing technique that only the ancient god clan knew. She had learned all of these from the orthodox primordial god, Yugu. However, there was still such a seal in the lower realm. She couldn't help but suspect this place. Was it related to the god race? She thought that the deeper they went, the more complicated and powerful the mechanisms and formations would be. Surprisingly, their journey was smooth and unimpeded. It was a smooth journey. It was just that he had a vague feeling that he was going deeper and deeper. The surroundings were getting darker and darker. After entering the treasure hunting system, it only changed directions twice. After that, he didn't move anymore. He just moved forward in a straight line. 2 hours later, a final notification appeared in the treasure hunting system. 3 meters straight ahead. He had reached his destination. Go straight ahead, my ass. There was clearly a wall in front of them. How could they go straight? It was a dead end. Was this treasure hunting system a pirated version? Mistress, there's no path here. Do we turn back? Sesame asked. Let me think. Zhu Yao stood by the wall. The arrowhead in front of him had not disappeared. Most of it had sunk into the wall in front of him. Could there be something behind it? Sesame, light up. With a twist of Sesame's hand, a ball of flames instantly appeared in his hand. The place which was still dark earlier instantly became much brighter. Zhu Yao continued to look at the wall in front of her and realized that it was formed by stacking square blocks of the same size. Zhu Yao stroked it and faintly felt that it was uneven, as though something was carved on it. Sesame, try using a wind-type mystic art to blow away the dust. Sesame nodded. A gust of wind blew, and the wall, which was still gray earlier, instantly became clean. A wall filled with words was revealed. Every single square block had a character written on it. It was a character that she could not recognize at all. It didn't look like a rune, nor did it look like a seal. Zhu Yao took a few steps back. After studying it for a long while, she still couldn't recognize what was written on it. And the characters were very scattered, as though they were written by a primary school student who had just learned how to read. Every single square block had a character. After every single block, there would be the same characters. With such a strange wall, it seemed like this place was either a formation or a mechanism. She knew a thing or two about formations, but when it came to mechanisms, she only knew, wait a minute. Zhu Yao looked back and forth at the wall, and a crazy thought suddenly appeared in the depths of her heart. This kind of square block looked a little like. Just as this thought rose, she immediately shook her head. Ho, how is that possible? With such high-end characters, how could it be such a retarded game? However, she could not help but reach out her finger to tap on the two identical characters. Suddenly, a creaking sound could be heard. The two characters flashed, and in an instant, they disappeared along with the square blocks. Disappeared. The hell? It really was a chain link. Hey, what happened to the promised mechanism formation? What happened to the promised high-end characters? The final checkpoint was just a chain link. Aren't you embarrassed? Zhu Yao felt that her intelligence had been severely looked down upon. Mistress, this is... Ignore me. I want some peace and quiet. Zhu Yao silently calmed herself down for 5 minutes before accepting her fate and stood up. She began to chain link, eliminating these squares. Not even a moment later, only 2 squares remained on the entire wall. In an instant, the original positions of those squares emitted waves of white light, instantly illuminating the entire space. Just as Zhu Yao was about to eliminate the last pair, she was stopped by Sesame. Mistress. Unknowingly, Sesame's face was already filled with fear, and his entire body was beginning to tremble a little. What's wrong? Behind that. His hand trembled a little as he pointed at the white light. There seems to be something terrifying, very terrifying. Terrifying? Zhu Yao calmed her heart and sensed for a moment. She did not know if it was because her current cultivation level was low, but she did not feel any fear. Instead, she felt a sense of familiarity. Mistress, don't go. Sesame pulled her hand. Zhu Yao frowned. After knowing Sesame for so long, this was the first time she had seen him so afraid. Could it be that there was really something incredible behind this wall? She was a little hesitant, but the arrow of the treasure-seeking system was still pointing in the same direction. The distance between them was also maintained at 3 meters. She took a deep breath. She had already come this far. No matter what, she had to give it a try. Sesame, wait for me here. Zhu Yao instructed. She reached out her hand and tapped on the last 2 squares. Suddenly, a strong light swept over, and a moment later, it disappeared again. Her vision instantly widened. Behind the wall, a green mountain and clear water appeared, filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers. Zhu Yao was a little unable to react. She never expected that there would actually be a place like this behind the wall. It was as though she had entered a different world. This was actually a small-sized mustard seed dimensional space. The treasure-seeking system shut down at the same time. Target reached. Navigation ended. Zhu Yao walked into that world. Rumble. Suddenly, thunder rumbled. A bolt of lightning struck down, landing a few meters away from her. Zhu Yao was shocked as she raised her head to take a look. In an instant, a bunch of grass mud horses whizzed past her heart. At the center of this world, there was actually a bug hanging high up in the sky. That's not right. It was a sword with the word bug written on it. That sword was as large as a mountain, and it was directly floating in the sky. The body of the sword was wrapped in countless lightning bolts. Looking from afar, it looked like a sword formed from lightning, a cold sword aura. Even she could feel the center of her brows faintly aching. It seemed like this sword was the target of her side quest this time. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth as she flew over with her sword. After getting closer, she could clearly see that other than the word bug, There was also a bracket on the sword, which wrote, Mama's egg, forget about the god's artifact. What's with that one? In other words, there's still a second, third, fourth, and fifth. Just how many side quests were there, hey? Zhu Yao really wanted to ask Realm Spirit about his family's genealogy. She had found the bug, but with such a huge sword, what was she going to do? Though it was a god's artifact, she couldn't destroy it. Eat it? Don't give me an impossible quest, hey? Zhu Yao wanted to cry. She circled around the sword a few times. Yet, she couldn't find a good place to eat it. Just as she was about to fly back, the sword suddenly shook for a moment. In an instant, the mountain shook. Zhu Yao lost her balance, and her claws pressed onto the sword's body. She had a bad premonition. The shaking instantly stopped, and an enormous amount of lightning spiritual energy suddenly crazily surged into her body. Zhu Yao could not hold on for a moment, as she puked out a mouthful of blood. However, that spiritual energy still surged into her body as though it was free. Mistress! Sesame flew in, hugged Zhu Yao, and landed on the ground. How are you? The lightning spiritual energy in her body did not stop, and it was even rampaging through her body in a frenzy. As though it had a grudge against the wood's spiritual energy in her body, it completely devoured the remaining wood spiritual energy. Zhu Yao felt her meridians were beginning to crack apart inch by inch, and the pain was so intense that she could barely stand straight. That bugged god's artifact seemed to have triggered some sort of switch as well, as it began to go berserk. Bolts of lightning crackled loudly. Zhu Yao could no longer suppress the sudden surge of lightning spiritual energy in her body, and her consciousness was beginning to blur as well. Suddenly, waves of red light shone from below her body, and in an instant, a figure dressed in a snow-white robe appeared next to her. That was a face she was extremely familiar with. Master! Zhu Yao instantly cleared up quite a bit. Why are you? Why did he appear here? This is the spiritual rhino formation you laid down. Yu Yen casually explained. When I woke up, I sensed that you were in danger, so I triggered this formation. So that's the case. When she left, she was worried. So she laid down a special spiritual rhino formation. That was the formation Xiao Bai had taught her back then. With the blood of the person who laid the formation as a guide, if the person receiving the formation was injured, or if it was activated by itself, the formation would directly teleport the person to the side of the person who laid the formation. Spiritual Rhino meant that both hearts were connected by telepathy. P.S. Thank you, Zhu Yao Fei Yang, a fellow student's Immortal's Fate Reward. This is the first Immortal's Fate Reward the author has ever received in her life. In order to remember this great moment, she decided to do it today. Amen. She was just that willful. My disciple died again. This chapter is Chapter 26, Side Quest Item. Chapter 208. Yu Yin formed a hand seal with one hand, protecting Zhu Yao's divine sense. With a sunken voice, he said, "There's too much spiritual energy in your body. You have to make preparations to form your Azoth core at any time." Azoth core. She was only at the early stages of foundation. Was there a need to forcefully level up like this? The surrounding thunder rumbled even louder. That sword that was even taller than a mountain, in an instant, was filled with lightning sparks, as though it carried the power to destroy the heavens and earth. The lightning's spiritual energy in the air grew even denser, giving off a suffocating feeling. Calm your mind and focus on forming your Azoth core. Yu Yin placed down a few formations to stabilize spiritual energy, and then sat next to her. Behind him, an illusory figure of a white dragon appeared, coiling around the two of them, helping her repair her damaged meridians. The lightning spiritual energy in Zhu Yao's body was very unstable, as though it was about to break out of her body. Her current avatar was a wood spirit vein holder. If she wanted to absorb these rampaging spiritual energy to form her Azoth core, she had to first convert the lightning spiritual energy into its spiritual energy, before guiding it into her dantian. However, because the lightning spiritual energy entered her body so suddenly, her conversion speed was far from being able to catch up with the rampaging spiritual energy in her body. The moment she converted the wood's spiritual energy, before she could even guide it into her dantian, it was first dispersed by the other lightning spiritual energy. She could feel the meridians in her entire body were filled with lightning spiritual energy, as though they were about to explode. The blood at the corner of her lips was flowing out uncontrollably. The hell? What kind of grudge did these lightning spiritual energy have with her? Why were they always so uncooperative? If this continued, even if her master was helping her from the side, her meridians would still be completely destroyed by the lightning spiritual energy that entered her body. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. In for a penny, in for a pound. She could not be bothered with converting anymore, and immediately guided the lightning spiritual energy into her dantian. In an instant, a heart-wrenching pain spread throughout her entire body, and Zhu Yao's entire body began to tremble. Yu Yin sensed her sudden actions as well. Just as he was about to stop her, he suddenly blanked. How could this be? The rampaging lightning spiritual energy had stopped. From the moment the lightning spiritual energy entered her dantian, the spiritual energy that had been charging into her meridians suddenly calmed down. As though it had received some sort of order, it began to flow smoothly into her dantian. Yu Yin frowned and did not stop her. Instead, he retracted his cultivation clone and began to seriously observe his disciple's transformation. Although her meridians were fine, her dantian was about to explode. An unfamiliar spiritual aura invaded her body. She was in so much pain that she could no longer feel anything. She could only guide it mechanically. Her originally smooth and gentle dantian began to slowly become restless and hot. It was somewhat similar to when she had the lightning spirit root in the past. No wonder spirit roots could be modified. Zhu Yao suddenly had this thought. With the mentality of treating a dead horse as a living horse, he sped up the absorption of spiritual energy. Enduring the heart-wrenching pain, he tried to use the lightning spiritual energy inside. Unexpectedly, there was really a reaction. The spiritual energy that entered her dantian obediently circulated according to her thoughts. She directly wrapped the spiritual energy around her entire dantian and slowly transformed it into a familiar shape. Then, he guided out the remaining spiritual energy and wrapped it around his meridians, forcefully expanding and absorbing it. In the beginning, the damage to her meridians was even more severe. Gradually, the lightning spiritual energy that wrapped around her meridians began to automatically repair all the meridians in her body. When all the spiritual energy in her dantian was used up, her meridians were already brand new, and the lightning spiritual energy that made her feel oppressed just now was powerless and friendly. Yu Yin immediately dispelled the surrounding formation. In an instant, a large amount of lightning spiritual energy, as though they had finally received an order, crazily poured into Zhu Yao's body. Not even a moment later, her initially empty dantian was once again filled up. This time, when the lightning spiritual energy entered her body, there was no longer that heart-wrenching pain earlier. Instead, there was a comfortable feeling. However, as the amount of spiritual energy increased, a swollen feeling rose. She was very familiar with this feeling. It was the barrier of a breakthrough in her cultivation. She did not stop either, as she continued to guide the spiritual energy into her body. A few minutes later, she could faintly hear the sound of something bursting out of the ground. Her meridians instantly expanded to twice their original size, and her cultivation was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye as well. From the second level of foundation, to the third level, fourth level, fifth level, all the way to the paragon level. That barrier had become even more obvious. The spiritual energy in her body was so full that it looked as though it was about to overflow. Finally, it was time for her to form her Azoth core. Forming her Azoth core once again was very simple to Zhu Yao. Following the method in her memory, she began to rotate and compress spiritual energy in the same direction. She only used 6 hours, and her Azoth core was formed. Her cultivation, however, did not stop rising. First level of Azoth core, second level, third level, fifth level. Only after reaching the Azoth core paragon did it stop. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, stopped guiding spiritual energy into her body, and then opened her eyes.
Master.
Amin, Yu Yin responded. Pulling his disciple's hand, he checked her pulse, and then sent a strand of spiritual energy into her body. Only after realizing that she was completely fine did he heave a sigh of relief. Mistress. Sesame pounced over as well, and with a face full of snot and tears, it rubbed against her body. Great, you're fine. I was so worried about this beastie. Zhu Yao pressed her palm towards its face that was about to come over, and pushed it back. Go away. You. Mistress, how can you be so heartless? It said with a wronged look. Scram. Find your 4-legged beastie. This old lady only likes her master who has 2 legs. Master, my spirit vein. She recalled the changes in her body. Yu Yin nodded. You currently possess the lightning spirit vein. The hell? She really made the right bet. Master, can spirit veins be changed? Originally, it couldn't. Yu Yin frowned. Spirit veins were all innate. Although there were some heavenly treasures that could wash away one of the spirit veins, he had never heard of anyone being able to create a desired spirit vein out of thin air. Most probably, it was because you were familiar with the lightning spirit vein in the past, which allowed you to succeed by luck. Others might not be able to do it. His own disciple seemed to always be able to discover things that others were unaware of. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Zhu Yao pondered for a moment. Indeed, earlier, she had been guiding the lightning spiritual energy to modify her meridians and dantian according to her memories. If what she attracted today was not lightning spiritual energy, most likely, she would have died a long time ago. Yu Yin even asked about the current situation. Zhu Yao told him about the incident where she encountered the Rise Fire Beast and fell into this ruin, as well as her encounter with Sesame. The two of them were talking seriously, and neither of them had noticed that the mountain-like sword behind them suddenly stopped its thunderous roars. It slowly rose up, and suddenly, its blade swept horizontally, flying towards their direction. Yu Yan's heart clenched. Hugging onto his disciple, he was just about to dodge, but he was a step too late. In a blink of an eye, that sword turned into a ray of white light and immediately flew over, entering Yu Yan's glabella. Zhu Yao simply saw an afterimage in the air. Master! Zhu Yao's heart clenched as she pulled onto her master. She felt as though her heart was about to jump out. Master! She once again felt that sense of panic. She knew how it felt when little Wimp died, as though the sky had collapsed. Please be all right. Yu Yin slowly lowered his head. His face carried a hint of confusion. Yu Yao, how are you? Does it hurt anywhere? She anxiously sized him up, and the only thing left was to remove his clothes to check if he was injured. I'm fine. How could he be fine? She clearly saw that sword turn into a ray of light and directly pass through his body. Yu Yao. He stroked his disciple's head. After pondering for a moment, he immediately pulled her into his embrace. He was a little surprised that his disciple, who had never been afraid of death, was actually trembling. Believe in your master, I'm fine. Only then did Zhu Yao calm down, and her rationality began to return. Then earlier, she turned to look. The gigantic sword that was still floating in the air earlier had now disappeared. Even the dense lightning spiritual energy in the air had disappeared without a trace. Yu Yin frowned and looked at his own palm a little blankly. A moment later, he spoke up with a hint of doubt. Yu Yao, your master's cultivation seems to have suddenly recovered. What did he mean? I recovered my original cultivation. Then you're now? Demigod. That's too fast, isn't it? Not only that, Yu Yin reached out a hand and opened his palm in front of her. With a flash of white light, a small sword filled with lightning sparks suddenly appeared in his palm. Zhu Yao's eyes fiercely widened. Wasn't this that mountain-like sword from earlier? Why was it here? And it had even turned into such a miniature one. Even the bug word on the sword had disappeared. I'm not sure of the reason either. Yu Yen frowned and explained, earlier, this object directly flew into my divine sense and merged with it. Merged with my divine sense, then isn't that? Yu Yen nodded. It has become my life artifact. Wasn't it said that life artifacts had to be nurtured in the divine sense at the Azoth stage? Master, is it really all right for you to suddenly nurture an unfamiliar sword in there? Will you get indigestion, hey? My spirit vein has changed as well. I've recovered my original lightning spirit vein. Just like that earlier? Emin nodded. Flip's table. Why was it so painful when she changed her spirit vein? Not only did her master's cultivation recover, he was even fine. Zhu Yao was filled with malice. Zhu Yao felt that it was time for her to head back and rest. However, when she recalled that her master's cultivation had already recovered, and Sesame had returned as well, with 2 more weapons of mass destruction by their side, no matter how powerful the Beast Lord was, they could still win by outnumbering him. No, it was 2 against 1. She suddenly had the urge to look for trouble in the demonic beast realm. What should she do? Oh, Yu Yao, I can't go back with you. Why? Zhu Yao was startled. Her disciple even needed to bully others with her strength. Yu Yen sighed and stroked his stupid disciple's head. That sword has recovered master's cultivation. I know. Didn't you say it before? Isn't that even better? Yu Yen shook his head, looking as though he was disappointed with his disciple's intelligence. He reached out his hand to hug his disciple, planning to demonstrate it personally. In a flash, the 2 of them had already left the underground ruins and returned to that forest. Zhu Yao had yet to react. Just what did he mean by that? The entire sky suddenly darkened, and layers of tribulation clouds instantly filled the entire sky. This is Ascension Lightning Tribulation. Why the hell was there this? Yao, I've recovered my cultivation. I know, you've already said it 3 times. Wait a minute, it couldn't be. You've recovered the cultivation of a high deity? The laws of the heavenly Tao suppressed my cultivation, so I'm currently a demigod. However, I'm a high deity after all. Back then, that mustard seed dimensional space had an ancient formation that evaded the laws, so I wasn't detected. If I were to come out, he raised his head to look at the sky. Zhu Yao followed his gaze and looked at the clouds as well, only to see the sky instantly turning snow-white, and a bolt of tribulation lightning flashed across the horizon. Yu Yen released her. Being forced by the heavenly Tao, Master has to ascend to the higher realm. As expected, the 9 heavenly lightning bolts descended straight in Yu Yan's direction, bringing along a pressure that filled the entire sky. Boom! They struck Zhu Yao's body. Zhu Yao, Yu Yen. In an instant, Zhu Yao, who was struck into charcoal, puffed out a mouthful of black smoke. Master, can I discuss something with you? Emin, next time. When there's lightning, don't pull me over to watch, all right? Will you die if you don't screw your disciple over? In order to not ascend, her master had no choice but to stay in the mustard seed dimensional space which originally held the god's artifact. Zhu Yao had initially thought that after her master had recovered his cultivation, she would be able to do whatever she wanted. She never expected that it would be completely useless. The setting of having to ascend as soon as he came out was simply too torturous, all right? If he had known earlier, he would have been better off with a Jean Dan. In the end, she still had to farm the bug herself. His heart felt stifled. Mistress, someone's here. Sesame nudged Zhu Yao. Oh yes, she also has a beast. No, we have to find her. A familiar voice came from afar. 3 men and 2 women walked over from not too far away. It was Yi Ling's group. However, other than the 4 people she recognized, there was also an unfamiliar man. He was also in the Oris Core realm, and he had a handsome appearance. Between his brows, there was even some dignity of a person in a high position. At this moment, he was looking at Yi-Ling affectionately. Did the number of people in the harem increase again? Sure enough, he was tall, rich, and handsome, an Iron Mary Sue. They seemed to be arguing about something. Junior Marshall's sister Lin Xiang. Qi Ping took a step forward and said to Lin Xiang, "It's not that we don't want to find her, but we have already searched for 2 days, yet we still haven't seen her figure. Furthermore, the terrain of this labyrinth is complicated and filled with traps. Continuing to search is just a waste of time." "That's right, Senior Marshall's sister Lin," Yi-Ling gently said. "I'm very anxious about Senior Marshal Sister Zhu's disappearance as well, but Senior Marshal Brother Qi's injuries have yet to fully recover as well. How can you only care about your own selfish desires?" "Selfish desires?" Lin Xiang was angered to the point of laughing. "Yi-Ling, are you blind? If she hadn't lured that demonic beast away, would you guys still be standing here perfectly fine? Now that she's gone, you guys aren't even willing to look for her." Senior Marshal Sister Lin, Yi-Ling's eyes reddened, and she looked as though she was about to cry from being wronged. "That's not what I meant. It's just that we've been searching for so long. Furthermore, if she had told us earlier that it was a 6th-rank demonic beast, we wouldn't have. What did you say?" Lin Xiang was instantly enraged. "She didn't tell you? You're the one who didn't believe her at all. Furthermore, she saved you, and saved all of us, yet you're still saying such words. Do you even have a conscience?" Senior Marshal Sister Lin, Yi-Ling's tears began to fall. The 3 men present instantly had pained expressions. "Enough, Junior Marshal Sister Lin. This isn't Ling Er's fault anyway." Lan Qi glared at Lin Xiang a little furiously. Lin Xiang glanced at the 3 of them and coldly snorted. "If you guys aren't going to look for her, I'll look for her myself." So it was to look for her. Zhu Yao gave Lin Xiang girly a thumbs up. She sure had the spirit of brotherhood. It seemed like in this world, Mary Sue weren't the only idiots. There were still people with normal values. She felt a little gratified. Just as she was about to step forward, she suddenly heard Sesame, who had been standing next to her, muttering, "In this world, there's actually such an otherworldly beauty." Zhu Yao's feet turned. Chapter 209. Fuck. Let go of otherworldly beauty, okay? It's just a child. "Sesame," Zhu Yao called out. Sesame, however, did not have any reaction at all. It simply looked at Yi-Ling's direction in a daze, as though it was possessed, and unknowingly approached her. This scene was exactly the same as when the fox by Yi first met Yi-Ling. Zhu Yao simply felt her heart sink for a moment. The people on the other side had noticed the commotion here as well. Zhu Yao grew anxious and immediately kept Sesame into her divine sense. "Mistress?" Sesame, who had already reverted back to his beastie form, had a confused look. "Sesame, wake up." Though Zhu Yao really wanted to chat with him about life, seeing that the few people were already walking over, she had no choice but to say, "I'll tell you later." Senior Sister Zhu. Lin Xiang was the first to run over. She looked at her anxiously for a while, and her eyes were slightly red. "It's really you. Are you all right?" "It's okay." She still had a good impression of Lin Xiang. Fortunately, Lin Xiang heaved a sigh of relief. "Senior Sister Zhu, it's great that you're fine." Yi-Ling also walked over. She still had that innocent look on her face. "We've been looking for you for 2 days. I didn't expect you to come out before us." In other words, there was a hint of resentment towards her for abandoning everyone and leaving the labyrinth alone. Lin Xiang's face instantly darkened. "Oh? So Junior Marshal Sister Yi has been looking for me?" Zhu Yao smiled. "Earlier, why did I hear that you guys were going to leave me behind and return to the sect first?" Yi-Ling's face paled. Evidently, she did not expect that Zhu Yao had heard everything she said earlier, and for a moment, she felt a little embarrassed. He turned around and looked at the people behind him for help. "It's good that she's out." Flower Guardian Lan Qi immediately responded. However, he was even more dissatisfied with Zhu Yao. especially the unfamiliar man beside her. Although he hadn't said a word, the way he looked at her was filled with hostility. Seeing Yi Ling being humiliated, Lin Xiang was evidently very happy. As she affectionately pulled onto Yi Ling, Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, "Where's that rise-fire beast? How did you escape? We followed the place where you fell, but we couldn't find any trace of you. The underground is very big. I didn't see the demonic beast after I fell down." Naturally, Zhu Yao couldn't tell the truth, so she could only lie. "I circled around inside for 2 days before I found the exit." Although Yi Ling and the others were somewhat suspicious, they couldn't find any flaws. After all, the underground terrain was indeed very complicated. "Oh right, where's Bai Yi?" She did not notice before, but upon closer inspection, she realized that one was missing. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's expression changed. Especially Yi Ling. Her eyes were filled with tears, as though she was about to cry. She looked at Zhu Yao resentfully. "Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, why didn't you come up earlier? Junior brother Bai, he's already in the labyrinth looking for you." The more Yi Ling spoke, the sadder she became. Before she could finish, she had already turned around and laid her head on the stranger's shoulder, sobbing. "What's wrong with him?" Zhu Yao frowned. She could no longer be bothered with the fact that Yi Ling was constantly pulling aggro for her. "I don't know which formation mechanism Junior Brother Bai triggered, but he's already lost inside." Lan Qi finished Yi Ling's unfinished words and glanced at her with a hint of reproach. Then, he looked at the stranger and said, "If Brother Mu Lu wasn't proficient in formations and brought us out, I'm afraid we would have been trapped inside as well." Qi Ping said with an indignant look as well. "This is all your fault. If we weren't looking for you." Humph. Oh, they actually wanted to blame it on her, even though they had lost the person. "How can you say that?" Lin Xiang was instantly enraged. Just as she was about to step forward and argue, Zhu Yao pulled her back. Sizing up the 4 of them, she coldly laughed. "Then I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have lured that rise-fire beast away in the first place and fell into that labyrinth. Don't worry. If something like this happens again, I will definitely watch you die." The faces of the 4 of them instantly paled, yet they couldn't find any words to refute her. She had seen plenty of ungrateful people, but this was the first time she had seen people who were so fresh and refined. Zhu Yao couldn't be bothered with these retards and turned to look at the man called Mu Lu. If she remembered correctly, this was the Demon King in Yi Ling's harem, right? It was no wonder his entire body was filled with demonic energy. "This fellow Taoist Mu, since you were able to bring everyone out of that labyrinth, why didn't you help find Junior Marshal Brother Bai along the way?" Mu Lu raised his brows and smiled. A hint of seductive aura faintly leaked out from between his brows. It was so alluring that even Yi Ling, who was in his embrace, was dumbfounded. "Fellow Taoist Zhu, it's not that I'm unwilling, but that place's terrain is extremely complicated. I'm unable to find that fellow Taoist Bai's location either." His answer was watertight. "Is that so?" Zhu Yao said with a laugh. "And I had thought that since you and Bai both belong to the Fox clan, though you have a few extra tails, there should be some special ways to communicate with each other, right?" The smile on Mu Lu's face instantly disappeared. "Don't you slander me." Mu Lu did not speak, but his follower Qi Ping jumped out. "How can Brother Mu Lu be a demon?" This time, it was Zhu Yao's turn to be shocked. They actually did not know that Mu Lu was a demon? Though human practitioners and demon practitioners lived in harmony, those who were not of the same race would definitely have different intentions. From the bottom of their hearts, the two still did not trust each other. This was also the reason why Bai Yi had been unhappy ever since he entered Blue Parasol Sect. Zhu Yao sized up the few of them for a moment. "Are you all blind?" His entire body was filled with demonic energy. Could none of them see through it? "Big Brother Mu Yu." Yi Ling raised her head a little doubtfully as well. The calm expression on Mu Lu's face finally could no longer be faked. His expression changed, and a moment later, he straightforwardly admitted it. Fellow Taoist Jew, you have good eyesight. You were actually able to see through my true form with a single glance. Sorry, she wasn't blind. Only then did the crowd reveal looks of disbelief. But, that fellow Taoist I'm indeed unable to find his whereabouts. After saying that, he looked towards Yi Ling with a guilty expression. Linger, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to save your junior martial brother. Big brother Mu, I know. Yi Ling looked at him with an understanding expression. It's already not easy for you to bring us out. The two of them looked at each other with deep emotions, while the two men at the side were silently saddened. Seeing such a scene, Zhu Yao simply wanted to find a place to puke. If she did not know about the plot beforehand, she might have really thought that Mu Lu was powerless despite having the heart. However, this so-called underground labyrinth was the nest of this nine-tailed fox, Mu Lu, in the first place. He had cultivated here for over 100 years, so it was impossible for him to not know the terrain. In the beginning, because of that god's artifact underground, she had yet to connect the ruins with the labyrinth where the Demon King lived. But now that she thought about it carefully, when she fell into the underground, she had once activated a teleportation formation. Hence, she was teleported to that ancient ruin. In other words, this ruin was actually divided into 2 floors. The first floor was most likely the labyrinth where Yi Ling and the others entered to look for her, and the other floor was the place where the god's artifact was placed. Mu Lu had been in the labyrinth for so many years, and the formations and mechanisms inside were laid down by him as well. It was impossible for him to not know whereby he was. The only explanation was, he did it on purpose. Nine-tailed foxes were kings among demons, and they were naturally prideful. He could tolerate other equally outstanding men by Yi Ling's side, but he might not be able to tolerate a lowly member of his own clan. Though Zhu Yao was not interested in their love-hate relationship, she did not wish for someone to push Bai Yi's matter onto her head. In other words, you really can't find Bai Yi? Zhu Yao once again confirmed. I'm powerless, Mu Lu answered. It's fine. Zhu Yao chuckled. I can find him. She immediately released her divine sense and probed into the labyrinth. In an instant, it covered the entire underground floor, and at the same time, her might poured out without any restraint. Everyone present, other than Lin Xiang, whom she had intentionally avoided, had pale expressions. Cold sweat faintly appeared on their foreheads, and Yi Ling's blood was churning. If not for Mu Lu protecting her by the side, her meridians would have long been damaged. Qi Ping, however, was not as fortunate, as he instantly puked out a mouthful of blood. Junior Marshal Brother Qi. Lan Qi was startled. He looked towards Zhu Yao and was about to speak up. However, Zhu Yao spoke up first. Found him. She cast an art, raised her hand, and shouted. Heavenly descent. A series of thunderous rumbles resounded. Thousands of heavenly lightning bolts struck straight towards an empty space a few dozen meters away from them, instantly creating a deep crater. Zhu Yao did not care about the dumbfounded crowd, and immediately flew towards that area. Lowering her head, she saw a yellow fox with mixed fur, curled up several meters below with its tail between its legs. With a flick of her sleeves, she instantly used a mystic art to drag it out. Bending her finger, she tapped on his furry forehead and forcefully restored him back to his human form. A moment later, a man dressed in a shitty yellow robe appeared in front of her. It was no wonder this fox had a fetish for clothes. This yellow fur was really ugly. Junior Marshal Brother Bai. Yi Ling excitedly charged over to make her presence known. Senior Marshal Sister Yi. Bai Yi was only startled for a moment, before he immediately sprinted into Mary Sue's embrace. His face was filled with the joy of a reunion. It's great that you're fine. You don't even know how anxious I was. Senior Marshal Sister, I'm fine. I'm fine. For Senior Marshal Sister, I will persevere. Junior Marshal Brother Bai. Senior Marshal Sister E. Heavens? Lin Xiang suddenly interrupted from the side. She looked at the two of them with a face full of ridicule and snorted coldly. Just now, I don't know who it was that insisted on returning to the sect. Yiling's expression paled, as she anxiously said to Bai Yi, "It's not like that, Junior Marshal Brother Bai. I just wanted to return to the sect to call for more manpower." "I know," Bai Yi said without any regrets. "I know Senior Marshal Sister will definitely come and save me." "The one who saved you isn't your Senior Marshal Sister Yi." Lin Yi coldly laughed, as he turned to look at Zhu Yao. The two's expressions stiffened, and only then did they recall Zhu Yao who was behind them. Bai Yi's expression, however, carried an additional hint of guilt, as he respectfully bowed towards Zhu Yao. "Thank you, Senior Marshal Sister Zhu, for saving me." "It's nothing." Zhu Yao glanced at the two of them, and said without any trace of politeness, "This is what you should be thanking me for." Lin Xiang giggled, as she hurriedly walked over. With a curious look, she asked, "Senior Marshal Sister Zhu?" "No, I have to call you Senior Marshal Aunt Zhu now." They had to call anyone with an Azoth stage cultivation and above Senior Marshal Aunt, with the exception of Lan Qi, who lowered his own status in order to woo girls. "How did you suddenly form your Azoth core? And you even learned such a powerful mystic art?" Everyone looked over in an instant, especially Lan Qi and Mu Lu. One of them was an early-stage Azoth core, while the other was a late-stage Azoth core. In this world, they were already considered to have extremely good aptitudes. However, they never expected that in just 2 days, Zhu Yao, who was initially an early-stage Azoth core practitioner, would directly form her Azoth core and even rise to an Azoth core paragon. Mu Lu was a demon type, so he was most afraid of tribulation lightning. Even now, he was still faintly afraid of the heavenly lightning earlier. "I just had an epiphany when I was on the verge of death in the labyrinth," Zhu Yao casually explained. "Since Bai Yi has already been found, let's head back." Lin Xiang knew that she wasn't willing to speak further, so she no longer asked. The few of them flew on their swords with various expressions. Just when they left not too far away, a series of rumbling sounds could suddenly be heard. As though an earthquake had occurred on the ground of the entire forest, it began to collapse on a large scale. For a moment, the mountains shook and the earth shook. Something was slowly rising from the ground, and half of the entire forest was currently being uprooted. Countless rocks tumbled down, and trees toppled over. It was as though a layer of outer shell had been peeled off the entire rising ground. A majestic palace was revealed. It rose higher and higher, and finally, it floated in midair. Everyone stared blankly at this large-scale palace that suddenly flew out from the ground, and they were all dumbfounded. A moment later, the surroundings of that palace suddenly flashed with lightning, and the rumbling sounds of thunder constantly resounded in their ears. A moment later, those lightning bolts actually gathered into several gigantic spiritual swords that were as tall as mountains. Like guards, they surrounded the surroundings of the palace, forming an impenetrable large-scale sword formation. It was even faintly emitting out a pressure that caused one's heart to palpitate. This formation was 5 Elemental 9 Rotations Heavenly Lightning Formation. Yao. A familiar voice transmission suddenly sounded in the depths of her heart, and it was still the same calm tone. "No matter where your master is, you must remember that I will always protect you." The corner of Zhu Yao's lips could not help but curl up, and her heart was filled with emotions. "I know. If you really can't beat it," that voice continued, "then run back to your master. Don't try to court death. Just how little confidence do you have in your own disciple?" "Senior Marshal Sister Zhu?" Lan Qi looked towards Zhu Yao. "What do you think this is?" "I don't know either." Zhu Yao acted dumb. She couldn't possibly say that her own son had raised the underground ruins, right? "Let's return to the sect first." Everyone exchanged glances, and had no choice but to first return to the sect to report about this anomaly. Hence, they sped towards Blue Parasol Sect. Zhu Yao was thinking about Sesame, so she flew the fastest. She faintly felt that she seemed to have forgotten something. She couldn't recall it at that moment. Forget it, let's talk about it in the future. In the ruins, a rise-fire beast that had yet to ascend into the sky was seriously staring at the 6 crossroads. You, Lord's mistress, why isn't she back yet to hold my paws? So impatient, so impatient. Lowering his head, he glanced at his own paws and began to count them one by one. She will come back to hold my paws. She won't come back to hold my paws. She will come back to hold my paws. Sesame, just what's going on with you? The moment she returned to her own little courtyard, Zhu Yao placed down a few isolation formations and began to immerse her own divine sense. She stared at that demonic beast which had already returned to its original form. I'm warning you, I don't mind who you fancy, but that Mary Sue Ling is definitely out of the question. You better wake up a little. Who's Ling? Sesame tilted its beast head and twisted its body. Mistress, why did you suddenly hide this beastie in your divine sense? This one has been sealed for so long, and it's rare for me to come out. I just wanted to go out and keep a lookout. Stop it. Earlier, you were still staring at me in a daze. Zhu Yao ignored its act of cuteness. She immediately materialized Ling's image in her divine sense and sternly said, Sesame, I understand your feelings as a single beastie, but if you want to find a partner, you should find a good one first. Her? Sesame was startled, and then it shook its beast head like a rattle drum. I don't like 2-legged ones. I only like 4-legged beasties. Then what happened to you earlier? It clearly did not even blink its eyes. Earlier, Sesame had a confused look. As though it had recalled something, it suddenly blanked. I don't know either. When it looked at the image again, its expression became even more confused, and its entire beast head was about to turn into a bun. Her body seems to have something on it. I couldn't help but... What do you mean? This answer was out of Zhu Yao's expectations. Mistress, I don't know either. When I saw her earlier, I suddenly felt like getting closer to her, just like... Sesame frowned and scratched its head with its paws. After pondering for a long while, its eyes shone, just like back then when Mistress released her dragon's might. Chapter 210. Back then, the reason why Zhu Yao was able to release her dragon's might was because she was a dragon in the first place, and dragons belonged to the god race, which had a bloodline suppression effect on demonic beasts. If Ling had it as well, could she be a god as well? Zhu Yao immediately denied this. Sesame merely said it was similar, and did not confirm that it was a dragon's might. Furthermore, her bloodline suppression back then should be an impulse to make demonic beasts submit to her, and Sesame's reaction when it saw Ling was clearly an infatuated expression. Bai was the same back then as well. If she was a god, then it could only be effective on demonic beasts. Bai was just a demonic practitioner. Ling most likely only had a special trait that could make people infatuated with her, and it might be similar to a charm art. However, it was clearly a lot more advanced than an impulsive charm art. If she really had to define it, it could be understood as a powerful hormone amplification device. Wait a minute. Could this be her Mary Sue halo? The men in her harem all fell in love with her because of this? And they never looked back on the path of idiocy? Thinking about it carefully, it seemed that in the plot, the people who fell in love with her, other than her master and senior brother who raised her, seemed to be all of them. They just took a glance at her in the crowd, and they couldn't forget her face. Having a physique like this was a little too legendary, wasn't it? Was she really just a regular practitioner? Or did she have something on her that could trigger this physique? Mistress, after I entered your divine sense, that feeling disappeared. Sesame weakly added. Zhu Yao was startled. Her divine sense had the effect of isolating hormones? She immediately released Sesame. Are you sure? Sesame automatically turned into a small ball, about the size of a plush toy. Its little head nodded strongly. Mistress, after you placed me in your divine sense, that feeling of being summoned disappeared. Then, other than wanting to get closer to her, did you feel anything different? Zhu Yao asked. Sesame pondered for a moment and then shook its head. The time was too short. I couldn't feel anything. In other words, she couldn't be sure if Yiling was born with a Mary Sue, or if she relied on an external object to cultivate her Mary Sue. It seemed like she had to let Sesame meet her again in order to confirm. Zhu Yao never expected that this opportunity would come so quickly. Less than an hour after she returned to her room, the sect leader sent someone to invite her to the main hall. This time, the disciple who came to deliver the message was not as arrogant as before. Instead, he respectfully called her martial aunt. He led her all the way to the main hall. Zhu Yao had Sesame conceal itself into a small demonic beast and stand on her shoulder, following her on her journey. On one hand, it would be convenient for it to observe Yiling. On the other hand, if it were to show any abnormalities, Zhu Yao would be able to store it into her divine sense to isolate it. She could actually guess the reason why the sect leader called her over this time. He probably wanted to rope her in after seeing that she had formed her gold core. Greetings to the three sovereigns, sect master, and the various elders. The sect master of the Blue Parasol sect immediately stopped her and said politely, Junior Martial Sister Zhu, there's no need to be so polite. Ever since she entered, the people in the hall were all shocked. According to Yiling's report, Zhu Yao had comprehended her Azoth core at the moment of life and death. Epiphany was a person's luck, but now that he saw her, he realized that her cultivation had already reached the golden core perfection. What kind of epiphany could allow a person to instantly rise from the early stages of foundation to the golden core perfection? Everyone was a little doubtful in their hearts, though they did not show it on their faces. Thank you, Sect Master. Zhu Yao's face project was done. So what if they were doubtful? Even if she did not say anything, she believed that no one could do anything about it. Everyone had different expressions. Only Yiling, who was standing behind Sovereign Xianyin, smiled. Calling out, Mother, he automatically walked over and habitually tugged onto the corner of her robe. He still had the appearance of a 12 to 13-year-old child. Zhu Yao reached out her hand to stroke his head as a form of greeting. Yu Ying's smile grew even deeper. His eyes intentionally or unintentionally swept past her shoulder as he obediently stood next to her. Zhu Yao looked around. As expected, other than the higher-ups of Blue Parasol sect, Yiling and the rest were all here as well. Lin Xiang was even standing behind the sect master, winking at her. I wonder why sect master has summoned me here. Zhu Yao went straight to the point, however. She glanced at Yiling, who was standing next to Xian Su from the corner of her eyes. She immediately transmitted her voice. Sesame, how is it? Did you see anything? What responded to her was a series of threatening hisses. The scales on Sesame's entire body stood up. It lowered its body, bared its teeth, and made an attacking stance. However, it was not aimed at Yiling, but at Yiling. Mistress, I really hate this person. I can bite him. Can I bite him? She had almost forgotten about how Yiling had injured it back then. Yiling, just how hated are you? Even if you changed your avatar, Sesame still wants to bite you. Zhu Yao looked at little Yiling with sympathy, and the latter replied her with an innocent smile. Enough, Sesame. Let's get down to business. After all, he was her son. Congratulations on forming your Azoth core, Junior Martial Sister Zhu. The Blue Parasol sect master said with a friendly smile. Although Junior Martial Sister Zhu encountered a 6th-ranked demonic beast, it can be considered as a blessing in disguise. The reason why I invited you here today is to discuss Junior Martial Sister's promotion to an elder. I wonder which one Junior Martial Sister is more proficient in: talismans, artifacts, pellets, and formations. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment and then honestly replied, I'm more proficient in refining artifacts. To be more precise, She had learned about formations, artifacts, and talismans before. She was just more confident in refining artifacts. When her words fell, a hint of something flashed past the sect master's face. Oomph! A cold snort sounded from above. Sovereign Xian Su glanced at her with a scornful look. Silly little girl. You actually dare to talk about refining artifacts. Zhu Yao was startled. She did not understand why this person would suddenly start mocking her. The sect master said with an awkward look, Junior Martial Sister Zhu, can you consider something else? Refining artifacts. Let her speak. Xian Su, however, interrupted the sect master's words and looked at Zhu Yao with a cold expression. I do want to see just what rank an artificer you, a mere Azoth core practitioner, is? Although he had asked with sincerity, Zhu Yao still frowned and pondered for a moment. 7th rank, I guess. In reality, she was at the 10th rank. However, with her current Azoth core cultivation, she could at most refine a 7th rank artifact. When these words fell, everyone present took in a deep breath. Impossible, Yi Ling suddenly exclaimed, and glared at her with a furious expression, as though she had said something unforgivable. My master is only a 6th rank artificer. How can you possibly be a 7th rank artificer? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes. So you're blaming me now? You. Yi Ling was speechless. Fine. Let me see just how you're going to refine a 7th rank artifact. Xian Su's face darkened as well. Being slapped in the face by an Azoth core in public, even if he had cultivated for many years, he still could not swallow this anger. If you're really able to refine a 7th rank artifact, then I will hand over this chamber master position to you. What chamber master position? Senior Martial Ant, please calm your anger. The sect master immediately came out to smooth things over and secretly signaled Zhu Yao with his eyes. Senior Martial Uncle Xian Su is naturally the most proficient in the art of artifact refinement, and for the past few hundred years, the sword chamber has always been managed by Senior Martial Uncle. Junior Martial Sister Zhu, with your current cultivation, although you're qualified to be a chamber master, it's still better for Senior Martial Uncle to continue managing this sword chamber. Why don't you choose something else? The hell. So it wasn't as simple as just being promoted to a nominal elder. The sect master was giving her actual authority. A chamber master was equivalent to a mountain lord in ancient hill sect in the past, right? Say so earlier. I don't want it. Zhu Yao shook her head like a rattle drum. Seeing that Xian Su was about to flare up again, she explained. What I'm saying is, I don't want to be a chamber master. It doesn't matter if it's a sword chamber or a pellet chamber. I just want to quietly be a beautiful young lady. Quietly cultivate. Thank you, sect master, for your good intentions. No need to say any more. However, Xian Su was unwilling to let it go, as he looked at her with disdain, as though he basically did not believe that she could refine a 7th-ranked mystic artifact. I'm a man of my words. Within 100 years, as long as you can refine a 7th-ranked mystic artifact, I will give up my position as a chamber master anytime. Actually, there's no need for that long. 3 days would do. Since Xian Su had said these words, the sect master did not have much else to say, and had no choice but to change the topic. Junior Martial Sister Zhu, I heard that an anomaly occurred at the location of your mission. An ancient ruin suddenly appeared, rose into the sky, and many strange formations appeared. It's here. She knew he was going to ask this. This matter has already attracted the attention of the various sects and clans. After many investigations, they were still unable to find the entrance. It seems like there's definitely a mystical treasure inside. The sect master swept his eyes across the various people who went on the mission back then and probed. Among the few disciples who went on the mission, only you once ventured deep underground. I wonder if you know a thing or two about the situation inside. I don't know either. She couldn't possibly say that her own master lived inside, right? But when we entered, there weren't any so-called special formations in the surroundings. After we left, that formation only appeared. It seems like someone had placed it down. As for whether or not there are mystical treasures inside, I don't know either. However, If we were to recklessly barge in and anger the supreme practitioner who placed down the formation, she intentionally did not finish her sentence. The expressions of the people in the hall, however, changed as they began to ponder deeply about her words. It was said that no one had ever seen the formations surrounding the ruin before, and they were extremely powerful. If there really was a supreme practitioner inside, he would at the very least be a nascent soul practitioner. Angering a nascent soul practitioner was really not a wise move. It seemed like the matter of probing the place had to be temporarily postponed. The sect master temporarily calmed down and understood that he would not be able to get any other information from Zhu Yao. Hence, he did not make things difficult for her. He directly let her go. Zhu Yao, who had accidentally pulled Xian Su's hatred once again, quickly returned and even pulled Yuying away. Compared to Xian Su, Yu Ying's master, Sovereign Xianyin, was much easier to talk to, as she let them go without saying a single word. The reason why she brought Yuying along was because she suddenly recalled that Yiling's Mary Su cheat was always successful, yet it seemed to be completely ineffective against Yuying. Even when she took the initiative to express goodwill to him, Yuying had never given her any face. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.